Chapter 530. Kaido looked at Dustless's eyes unexpectedly. He didn't expect this guy to have other eyes. Especially after he was defeated by Dustless, he listed the latter in the list of dangerous people, and his danger index is even higher than Whitebeard. Think about it, a person with a higher danger index than Whitebeard, how can his dojutsu be a trick to deceive people? Remembering the miserable scene after the genjutsu that day, Kaido closed his eyes in an orderly manner, and no longer looked at Dustless's eyes. Thinking of the elusive genjutsu, Kaido's heart was unusually heavy. Unknowingly, he will be pulled into the nightmare world if he doesn't pay attention. Your limbs are well developed, and your brain works very fast. But I'm afraid you will be disappointed. This is not the eye I used before, but compared to the Sharingan I used last time, this eye is much more terrifying. Dustless's left eye suddenly turned into a mysterious purple eye, and in the eye socket, a black coil spread, and a circle of ripples was clearly visible. It is Rinnegan Sharingan. What kind of witchcraft do you have? With a snort, Kaido continued to close his eyes without fear. In fact, fighting with closed eyes or open eyes is the same for him. Kaido, whose observation haki is already unfathomable, doesn't need to rely on pure vision to fight. Genjutsu can deceive the eyes, but it can't deceive observation haki. Compared to genjutsu, I'm actually better at attacking. Dustless raised his eyelids and stared at Kaido, who was on guard, and answered truthfully. His voice fell. Without waiting for Kaido to answer, he raised his right hand and locked his position, and a black hole appeared under his hand, and then a majestic and oppressive suction force came out. 10,000 mammoth heaven pull. A strong gravitational force suddenly enveloped him, and his body floated up. Aware of the abnormality of his body, Kaido's old face suddenly collapsed and became extremely ugly. The whole person seemed to have lost the restriction of gravity, floating uncontrollably, and it was extremely difficult to maintain the balance of the body, let alone launch an attack on Dustless. Even so, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to persist. He was not a person who gave up easily, and he tried to control the balance of his body and tried to stabilize. You still want to struggle at this point? Naive. Dustless said coldly with a sneer on his face. The biggest advantage of ninjutsu is its strangeness and diversity. Especially for people like Kaido who don't know anything about it, it's very difficult to deal with. Get over here. As Dustless' voice fell, the gravitational force in his palm became even more violent. Kaido, who was still struggling, was suddenly pulled over by brute force. Bastard. Die. Kaido flew into a rage out of humiliation when he saw that he couldn't get rid of the gravitational force. He switched from defense to offense and punched towards Dustless's head along with the force of gravity. However, although the idea was good, the reality was extremely cruel. Shinra Tensei, the whole person was about to approach Wu Chun. The fist covered with armament haki was about to hit him when a strong repulsive force broke out without warning. Kaido, who was caught off guard, was instantly sent flying by Shuai. As he flew backward, he cut through many large trees. Manipulating gravity and repulsion. How many abilities does this guy have? After a long while, Kaido stood up and scathed. He thought of Wu Chen's countless and endless trump cards. He sighed with emotion. Every ability of Wu Chun was an incredible ability that made others envious. The person in front of him is like the illegitimate son of God, with all the advantages. The strength of gravity and repulsion is not very strong. If I am prepared in advance, I should be able to avoid it. Kaido's face was full of light as he accurately analyzed. He is a veteran of the battlefield. After many years of fighting, he has developed a mind that is good at thinking. After figuring out the enemy's ability, he gives a fatal attack. This is his principle of winning. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in every battle. Katan. Grand Fire Annihilation. The blue sky was instantly dyed red. Looking up, he saw an overwhelming wave of fire coming toward him, and the terrible diameter reached a terrifying range of tens of meters. Kaido's old face changed slightly, and he even suspected that if it weren't for the existence of Doflamingo, the whole island would be covered by this fierce flame. No matter when flames were the natural enemy of all things in the world. The boiling torrent was unstoppable, and it easily scorched the ground. The vegetation in the surroundings was instantly reduced to ashes, and they transformed into bursts of dust that were blown away by the wind. Even so, it couldn't destroy Kaido. His whole person was swallowed by the flame, but he stood still. How can this kind of fire kill me? Kaido walked out of the flames with a contemptuous tone. At this moment, his whole body was covered with armament haki, and his whole body was pulsing with a threatening light. His strong physique was visible and full of explosive power. Even if the surrounding flames were swallowing Kaido's body, the temperature was not enough to melt him. The level of haki varies from person to person, and there is no limit. The strong are strong, and the weak are weak. For example, Doflamingo, in the face of such a terrible flame, it won't be long before he is swallowed and annihilated. Clang, clang, clang. Clapping his hands, there was a burst of crisp sound of steel. 100 Beast Kaido's dark face was full of ridicule, and the sarcasm in his tone was undisguised. No matter how strange your ability is, as long as I enter the state of armament haki, you can't hurt me. Kaido showed confidence. Armament haki can defend against any physical attack, and observation haki is enough to avoid any strange ability. This is his confidence in facing Dustless. Little did he know, Dustless's mouth swept a strange smile, and his eyes were staring at Kaido. It seemed that he saw Kaido's embarrassed look, and his sneer became more obvious. Kaido, who has a deep understanding of observation haki, suddenly realized that something was wrong, and his hair stood up, and he instinctively felt that something was wrong. Chapter 531. In such a hot environment, Kaido's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He didn't dare to be careless. His nerves have always been in a high-density state of concentration, on guard against Dustless's every move. In a fight between masters, victory or defeat is often in a short period of time. Especially the enemy at present, for Kaido, it is the strongest enemy in his life. 100 Beast Kaido knows nothing about Dustless, but Dustless is quite familiar with him, so he is already at a disadvantage. If he is careless, his pirate career may come to an end. Since you don't come over, then I will attack. Seeing Kaido not move for a long time, Dustless changed from defense to offense and rushed out. The Rinnegan in his left eye rotated rapidly, jumping out with strong energy fluctuations. Fortunately, he appeared early, otherwise I would have. Doflamingo, who was secretly watching the battle from afar, shuddered. He couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this exaggerated fight. If Dustless had appeared for just a second less, he might have been crushed into pieces by Kaido at that time. Seeing Kaido's strength, Doflamingo couldn't help but laugh at himself. How ignorant and ridiculous his previous idea was. He thought that he was only a line away from the Yonko for emperors. But now it seems that the gap is completely different. The so-called Shichibukai and Yonko for emperors are not comparable at all. It is even said that the two sides are one-sided. Apart from Hawkeye, there is no Shichibukai that can fight against Yonko for emperors. Boom boom boom, accompanied by an ear-piercing roar, a large deep pit appeared out of thin air on the flat ground. In the fierce battle between Kaido and Dustless, the slightest collision also produced strong sparks, which then turned into fierce shock waves that spread out, rewriting the surrounding geographical environment. Countless dense cracks on the ground are clearly visible. Some of them are enough to swallow and annihilate an adult human. This kind of crack is not unique, and there are countless of them. Gulp. Seeing this, Doflamingo began to think of retreating. Even if he was unwilling, the cruel reality of the current dangerous situation told him that this battle was not something he could interfere in. Now he had the will, but he was powerless. His body was covered in wounds, and he was already on the verge of death. Whether he can survive or not is a problem, let alone intervene in the battle between Kaido and Dustless. Go to hell. Observation haki locked on Dustless's every move. Looking at the temporary loopholes in Dustless's body, Kaido's killing intent burst out in an instant. The dark iron fist broke out with full strength. The condensed strength is enough to blow up a large building in an instant. Shinra Tensei. Hugging the sky with both hands, an unstoppable repulsive force erupted, forming a 360-degree absolute defense. The destructive airwaves were extremely sturdy. Don't think that one move Seeing Dustless using the same trick, Kaido sneered again and again. His huge body suddenly jumped up and then fell down. Using the falling force, he smashed towards Dustless. Looking up at the falling 100-beast Kaido, the sky darkened, and the sunlight shining from thousands of miles high was blocked by his wide body. Boom. Ka. Shinra Tensei, known as the Absolute Defense, collapsed in the blink of an eye, extremely fragile. The fist that was enough to crush a mountain fell on Dustless's head. Boom boom boom, Kaido fell down with the force of the dive. The moment he hit the ground, the whole island trembled violently. The ground was as fragile as paper, and Kaido wantonly played with it. Are you kidding me? Am I dazzled? You idiot, this is the strength of Yonko for emperors. It's nothing to be surprised about. The captain has destroyed more than one island. It's nothing to be surprised about. The island is slowly sinking. The Kaido pirates on the coast were shocked. Their eyes were fixed on the slowly sinking island, and they couldn't help but gasp. The only ones who could remain calm were the pirates who followed Kaido in the early days. Master, this scale of battle is beyond imagination. We should take advantage of this opportunity to escape. On the Tangjike pirate ship, Doflamingo was struggling to look at the slowly sinking island in the distance. Just now, he was saved by his bodyguard, Balfour, who had the rotating fruit. Waving his hand, Doflamingo stopped them from retreating. This is a rare battle. Open your eyes, learn more, and don't be a frog in the well. Doflamingo's tone was impassioned, and his bruises couldn't stop his heart from throbbing. He had suffered since childhood, and he had an almost obsessive pursuit of strength. This should be enough to kill you. So I should retreat. In the large deep pit, the wind and sand were all over the sky, and the visibility was less than 2 meters. Kaido was panting and slightly tired. His observation haki spread out, and the wind and grass around him couldn't escape Kaido's perception. Dustless's breath had completely disappeared. After spending so much effort, I finally got rid of that annoying fly. 100-beast Kaido said in a relaxed manner. The nightmare that had shrouded his heart also disappeared. Pucci. Without waiting for Kaido to be proud, a severe burning pain poured into his heart, and from his chest to his limbs Kaido groaned, and his face was as pale as paper. His eyes widened, and his body hidden in the sand. In a trance, Kaido saw Dustless's figure. I should have told you before, defeating me is just your wishful thinking, and the reality is like this. Wuxia, who was holding the first-generation ghost blade, walked out of the sandstorm. His whole body was surrounded by a bloody light. The demonic aura that was so deep that it wanted to crush the world made Kaido's nerves tense up uncontrollably. The deep blood stain on his chest was caused by it. Kaido was not an idiot, and the world knew that there was such a strong demon energy, and only the legendary weapon could reach this level. Chapter 532. As a top pirate in the New World, Kaido is also well informed. Such a suppressive and chilling monster aura can only be felt by the legendary first ghost blade. Among the 12 Wazakwando swords, only the first ghost blade has such a peerless edge, and the monster aura that makes people breathless. No, what means did this guy just use to escape the perception of Kenbun-shoku? Touching his strong chest covered with blood, 100-beast Kaido speculated. At the moment when he was attacked by Dustless, it was as if he appeared out of thin air and suddenly drilled out of the void. Well, this kind of weak attack, I have suffered many times in my life. Glancing at Dustless with disdain, the wound on Kaido's chest slowly recovered. Only a slender trace was left on the chest of a strong physique. Look carefully. In my life, I've received countless wounds of all kinds, but I've still survived. Not only that, but I also got the title of the world's strongest creature. Kaido said proudly, and at the same time, he raised his arm, and countless wounds were clearly visible. It's an interesting ability. Seeing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded secretly. Kaido's expression changed, and he also saw it. Although the change in his face was only temporary, it still couldn't escape Dustless's sharp eyes, and the corner of his mouth outlined a hidden smile. Every time he healed his wounds, Kaido's face would be a little pale and weak. Although it was fleeting, Dustless still keenly captured it. In fact, the previous series of warm-up was also a deliberate test. During this period, every time Kaido healed his wounds, the more deadly the wound, the paler and weaker his face would be. Healing the body actually consumes physical strength indirectly, and the heavier the wound, the more physical strength it consumes. In the long run, Kaido can't afford it. I've split you into 4 or 5 pieces. I don't know if you can heal. Touching his clean chin, he stared at Kaido and asked. Dustless's sharp eyes locked onto Kaido's heart. His face was dark and cruel, and the killing intent in his bones was not concealed at all. Affected by Dustless's killing intent, the first-generation ghost blade in his hand cried out in excitement, and a dense killing intent rushed towards Kaido. Hearing this, Kaido's expression froze, and then he said without showing any weakness, "If it works, you can give it a try." His eyes, which were even bigger than Tong Ling, stared at Dustless. Kaido was full of confidence. This time, he didn't dare to be careless. His body became extremely bright and dazzling. Kaido did not hesitate to enter armament haki hardening again. Escaping the perception of observation haki. If I'm not mistaken, it may be the ability to move through space. Fuck, does this kid have a devil fruit tree at home, eating all kinds of fruits? Even if he moves at the speed of light, he can't escape the perception of observation haki. Now Dustless is like a ghost that comes and goes without a trace. Kaido can only think of it as the ability of space. The habits and style of pirates are extremely bad, and when they get angry, they are even more unrestrained. Swearing is a way for pirates to vent their dissatisfaction. Against Dustless, 100 Beast Kaido has been holding back his anger for a long time, and his dazzling ability is really a headache. Whiz. Regardless of Kaido who was daydreaming, Wuxia raised his saber and waved his hand to release a blood-red chop. It crushed Kaido through all the thistles and thorns. Don't underestimate me. His eyes emitted a cold light. Facing such a threatening cold light, Kaido didn't retreat. Instead, he rushed forward like a fierce tiger. Boom. The iron fist condensed all the strength of the whole body blasted out, and the bloody light was suddenly dismembered, and the scattered hurricane pulled out messy cracks on the ground, as simple as cutting tofu. Bang bang bang. Kaido made threatening gestures as he dashed forward. Due to his immense strength, every step he took caused the ground to tremble. You are really worthy of admiration. Wuxia nodded slightly as he carefully sized up Kaido, who was coming toward him. Then his expression became as cold as a knife. He also rushed straight out without fear. Boom boom boom. The intense collision continued. The fight between the two of them had already surpassed the understanding of humans. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Sand and stones were blown away. Even the air was rumbling from the collision. It was extremely hot. Others are worried about the identity of Dustless and Flamingo, but Kaido naturally has no scruples. The identity of Tenzin has no effect on him, and only the one with the biggest fist is the final winner. Poochie. With the sound of flesh being cut, Kaido's skin suddenly had a bloody mark, but the next second the bloody wound healed. Whoosh! Dustless suddenly stepped back and pulled a distance away from Kaido, and his eyes narrowed. Using some means to stimulate the growth process of the cells to increase all aspects of the body. Dustless guessed that this method can even achieve the amazing effect of limb regeneration, but the side effects are also very big. First of all, the physical strength is unbearable. It seems that the conventional method is useless. Dustless stared at Kaido's chest, and the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye rotated rapidly, and a majestic eye power flooded out. The focus of Dustless's eyes was on Kaido. Boom boom boom. Without warning, a strong repulsive force exploded, and the center of the explosion was in front of Kaido. The sudden impact easily affected Kaido, and there was no way for him to escape, and he was thrown hundreds of meters away in an instant. The exaggerated repulsive force covered the whole island, and the slowly sinking island was swallowed by the sea at a faster speed. Being hit by Mahabharata, this should be enough. Dustless stared at Kaido, who couldn't stand in the distance, and said with a smile, "The principle of Mahabharata is similar to Super Shinra Tensei, and the biggest difference is that through Dustless's sight, he can choose the place to throw it at will." Chapter 533. Kaido was lying on the ground half dead, His breathing was weak. Due to the gradual loss of vitality, a sense of powerlessness spread all over his body, and it was no longer enough to maintain the state of armament hockey. Kaido, who was in a trance, saw the miserable appearance of the future. He was covered in blood and wounds all over his body, and he was lifted in the air like an ant. The initiator was dustless. I can't die yet. Kaido's old eyes emitted a cold luster, and his face was full of madness. He had been sailing the sea for so many years. How could he die in such a small, sinking island? Can't die? Who do you think can save you? A contemptuous voice sounded in Kaido's ears, with ridicule and naked contempt. He couldn't even move his body, and he was still delusional. Looking at the voice, it was dustless. Looking up and staring at the figure that suddenly flashed, Kaido's eyes were filled with murderous intent again. He stared fiercely at Dustless. If eyes could kill, at this moment, he would be full of holes and turned into a stick. It seems that this is the end. Looking down at the bloody Kaido, Dustless said indifferently. His cold tone was as cold as frost, and he looked at Kaido's eyes without any human emotions. In Dustless's eyes, Kaido was already a corpse. Can he still be repaired? But it seems that no matter how much he can be repaired, he is already at the end of his rope. The wound in front of his eyes was slowly healing. The bloody wound had once again coagulated, leaving behind an ugly scar. Even so, the healing speed was much slower than before, completely at the speed of a tortoise. Kaido was also panting heavily. His coarse old face was pale and covered in sweat. You want to turn around when you're at the end of your rope? It's not suitable to daydream in broad daylight. Staring at Kaido, who continued to stand up, Dustless frowned. This kid's vitality shouldn't be so strong that he could stand up after being beaten twice. The blow just now had crushed all the bones in Kaido's body, and his internal organs were dislocated, but he didn't expect this old guy to stand up. Of course, it could also be understood in another way. Driven by his undying desire, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to fight. I'm sorry, I just like to daydream. Even though he was seriously injured, Kaido did not show any weakness and chose to retort sharply. Any struggle is futile. Seeing that Kaido continued to stand up, Dustless kindly advised him softly. Since he was going to die anyway, there was no need for him to suffer. He might as well die peacefully. You want me to quietly wait for my death? You are not qualified. Kaido snorted disdainfully. At the same time he grinned, revealing a sinister smile. A cunning light flickered in the corner of his eyes. Glancing at Kaido, Dustless was unusually calm. In the face of absolute strength, any ability, including conspiracy and trickery, had little effect. A plan thought up by a mere beast was not even worth mentioning. Use whatever means you have. Dustless taunted Kaido with his index finger. Sometimes, watching a clown's confident performance could be considered a good entertainment. At the very least, it would add some joy to the ordinary and boring life. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me and purify the atmosphere of mankind. You alone stink the entire human race. Kaido's eyes were as sharp as lightning. From Dustless's playful eyes he sensed a kind of contempt, so he immediately used his mouth to attack. Dustless heard this without any expression, and his eyes were as calm as stagnant water. There was no need to argue with a dying man. Whoosh! Using all his strength, Kaido jumped dozens of meters into the sky, then turned around and slammed into the ground like a meteor. I was quite looking forward to it, but it turned out to be the same old trick. Looking up at the falling Kaido, a deep sense of disappointment flashed in his eyes. With the help of the falling force, he could indeed strengthen his attack, and the power could even flatten the island, but if he wanted to shake Dustless, it was still insufficient. Stupid. Dustless's lips curled into a sinister smile. When a human fell from the sky, it was very difficult for them to control their body as they wished due to the loss of balance. In other words, Kaido was now a living target. The tip of his thumb condensed a golden luster and aimed at Kaido's heart. Kaido wanted to use his own body to test the strength of Dustless' attack, so he naturally would not show any mercy. Laser. A golden beam of light shot out from Dustless' thumb, rising from the ground and shooting straight at Kaido, who was falling from the sky. A sharp light that could pierce through everything rumbled out. Poochie. Blood splattered in the air. A scorched wound suddenly appeared on Kaido's heart, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his throat. Even so, Kaido's expression did not change as he swooped down towards the island. Looking up at Kaido's coarse old face and hysterical madness, Dustless had a flash of inspiration. He seemed to understand what this kid was planning. This bastard. It seems that he wants to sink this island and perish together with me. Dustless could not help but sweat for Kaido's madness. He really wanted to know why this kid was so daring. After sinking the entire island, he would not be able to stand on it. Kaido himself would also be swallowed by the sea. Everyone knew that there was only one fate for a devil fruit user, who fell into the sea. You finally understand my plan? Kaido's unbridled laughter resounded through the sky, venting the bitterness in his heart for a long time. Fighting with Dustless could be said to be the biggest shame in the sea's life. He was almost completely suppressed and beaten up. After about a while, Kaido's wild laughter stopped. He looked at Dustless again. He originally thought that Dustless would show a panicked expression, but the latter was uncharacteristically calm. There was even ridicule in his eyes. There are countless people who want to perish together with me, but only one can do it. Moreover, you will face the same fate as them. Stepping into hell is your destiny. Chapter 534. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There are many people who want his life or indirectly want to die with him, such as Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Uchiha Obito. They all want to die with Dustless, but in the end, they all set themselves on fire. Now Kaido also wants to play the same game, damn it. The ideal is beautiful, but the reality is very cruel. A mere monkey wants to shake the world. There is only one end, and that is self-destruction. The chakra in Dustless's body began to go berserk, and just when he was about to crush Kaido's conspiracy, a flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind, and the chakra also went berserk. If one of the Yonko 4 emperors is drowned, the news will be very explosive. The leader of the pirates, 100 Beast Kaido, was choked to death by seawater. His corpse floated in the sea. This funny way of dying was more interesting than killing him. At this time, Kaido's whole body also hit the ground, setting off a sandstorm of several feet high, and even because of the terrifying power, the surrounding mountains had narrow and long cracks visible to the naked eye, faintly showing signs of splitting and collapsing. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful force hit the island, and the originally slowly sinking island swayed from side to side at this moment. The hidden volcano under the ground was violently impacted and suddenly erupted, and the whole island was eroded. At the center of the island, a huge pit appeared, and at first, only a small stream of water came out from the ground, and the seeping water was only a small stream, which was negligible, but finally, with the awakening of the dormant volcano, the whole island was changed unscrupulously, and the weak stream became stormy waves. The change of the geographical environment caused many holes to appear, and countless seawater spurted out from these cracks, and the speed of the island sinking was beyond expectations. Now even if that kid has a lot of means, he will definitely die, Kaido said with an evil smile, and his tone was full of endless pride and satisfaction. At the same time, Kaido's body also underwent earth-shaking changes, and he swam in a strange posture in the water, but the seawater didn't affect him at all. Is this your last card? I didn't expect your ability to be so magical. You can change into other creatures according to your will. It's really an incredible ability. Deep in the sea, Dustless suddenly appeared in front of a strange shark, and his words were full of surprise. This ugly creature is Kaido. What's so surprising? You're so naive. The huge mouth full of fangs spoke in human language, and a horrifying voice came out. It said proudly, "As you can see, this is one of my many abilities. Any creature in the sea, land, or air can be transformed with my will. Otherwise, where do you think my name, 100 Beasts, came from?" Kaido, who turned into a shark, his devil's fruit, was very proud. His devil fruit ability is so powerful, he can change any creature he sees, and can change it according to his will's will. Even in the sea, he could turn into a shark and move stealthily, and he had more advantages than on land. This was also one of the reasons why he was known as the strongest creature, in the sea, land and air. No matter when or where, he could change into the most advantageous form to fight, and he had an extremely strong geographical adaptability. Dustless slightly nodded and didn't deny it. This strange appearance in front of him is a bit shocking, and a bit out of the ordinary, because the Zoan ability user can turn into an animal. The only difference is that Kaido can change into any creature according to his will. You bastard, you were eroded by the seawater, but you didn't show any discomfort. Kaido, who turned into a super large shark, said with a gloomy face. His big eyes were full of disbelief. How can a devil fruit ability user not be affected by the seawater? This kind of mythical story happened in front of him. How can he not be surprised? Dustless shrugged. He can only sigh. The system's products must be the best. Because the nature of the system's existence is a manifestation of escaping the laws of heaven and earth. The things it gave out naturally can't be treated with common sense. The so-called seawater and sea stone are useless to him. Chat is over. Dustless's face converged and was replaced by killing intent. The water around him changed according to his will, and his face was full of ridicule. Just a beast. Do you think you can do whatever you want in the sea by turning into a shark? I advise you not to take any chances. This kind of naive and ridiculous idea is fatal. Hearing this, Kaido, who turned into a shark, sneered, and was about to open his mouth to attack Dustless, but the latter's figure disappeared like a ghost. Above the cloudless sky, Dustless floated quietly, overlooking the disappearing island below, and the Kaido pirates who haven't escaped yet. The killing intent in his eyes was clear. Suddenly, the sky was gloomy, and an unprecedented shadow covered the sky and the ground, covering the sea below. Looking up, he saw a meteorite with the size of tens of kilometers floating above Dustless's head. The great waves will wash away the sand. Whether or not you can escape will depend on your luck. As Dustless's voice fell, the super-large meteorites floating above his head lost control and fell out of thin air. These meteorites were attracted from outer space by Dustless through the Tensigan, and the impact of hitting the sea is self-evident. White Zetsu, what's the situation with Mariehua? Looking at the falling meteorites, Dustless closed his eyes and communicated with White Zetsu. On the other side, the Edo Tensigan army was also besieging Mariehua. How else can it be? That group of minions was easily suppressed by the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. White Zetsu said helplessly. Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Those Edo Tensigan were all strong people in this world. Most of them were at the Vice Admiral level. Even if they barely reached the Admiral level, they fell to the Vice Admiral level because of the Edo Tensigan. But their biggest advantage was not their strength, but their immortal body. Before Dustless could ask why, White Zetsu's voice sounded in advance. The native power of this world really can't be underestimated. The truth that science can change everything is true. Chapter 535. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, looked stiff and gloomy. White Zetsu was an existence he created himself. The probability of betraying him, or lying to him, is 0. Science can change everything. This strange idea is a fantasy for people like Dustless who believe that strength is above everything. Tell me the details. With a hint of killing intent in his tone, Wuxia asked in an unquestionable tone. White Zetsu wouldn't dare to fabricate something out of thin air. Hearing the killing intent in Dustless's tone, White Zetsu's tone was also restrained. If he made a joke while Dustless was in a rage, the consequences were definitely not something he could bear. This hesitation flashed in his tone. Remembering Dustless's cold tone, White Zetsu gritted his teeth and said, I also understand the specifics. In short, the Edo Tensei is controlled by Vegapunk's invention, and is bound to a very small environment. Baiju said solemnly. His tone was filled with disbelief. However, that was the truth. He couldn't deny it. The army of the Edo Tensei is bound in a cage by Vegapunk's invention, and the hard wall can't be broken no matter how hard it is. Vegapunk? Thinking of the fat scientist with an unflattering appearance, Dustless's dissatisfaction disappeared in a flash, and he became interested for a while. Vegapunk is the chief scientist of the Navy and the government. He has created and invented countless things in his life, and all kinds of strange designs are also fantastical. He even created a strange life like the artificial dragon. In short, Vegapunk is a very intelligent person, and his inventions are also very practical. Maybe I used to underestimate the scientific theory of this world. Dustless floating in the sky was gloomy, and he opened his eyes solemnly. The legendary ancient weapon Pluto is a product of science. Even according to Dustless's speculation, the Heavenly King is a similarly large space battleship. Forget it, I will go and see it myself. Dustless said softly after cutting off the connection with White Zetsu. He was a little curious about the peerless genius Vegapunk, and he suddenly had the idea of capturing him for his own use. Caesar is good, but he is still far behind Vegapunk. Boom boom boom. The meteorite, which was tens of kilometers in size, slowly fell into the sea, creating huge ripples on the surface of the sea. These guys are really cunning. They know how to plan for a rainy day. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation. Although many of the Kaido Pirate Regiment's battleships were hit by meteorites, there were still some who escaped, and this group of people was extremely smart. They knew that they would be attacked by Dustless if they sailed carelessly on the sea, so they prepared the coating tools in their previous inventory and urgently coated the hull with film, and then dived into the depths of the sea. Do you think this little bit of cleverness will work? How laughable! Dustless shook his head in disdain. The blue sky darkened once again, and a meteor of the same size as the one before descended upon Dustless's head. There are countless meteorites in outer space. The eye power of Tensigan can even control the moon. These sesame mung bean-sized meteorites are naturally easy for Wuxian to use, and there is no pressure at all. If you can still live like this, it really means that your life is not meant to end, Kaido. With a slight wave of her white and tender little hand, the huge meteorite also fell, slowly falling into the sea. The target is Kaido and his crew in the depths of the sea. In the face of such a large meteorite attack, if the Kaido Pirate Regiment can still escape, it can only be said that God favors them. And these guys really know how to pick the right time. They always appear at such a coincidental time. The Navy always stands at the best angle to reap the benefits of others. Looking as far as the eye can see, the super-large fleet dozens of kilometers away is slowly approaching, and the unique marine battleships and special flags are clearly visible. Dustless, with his extremely abnormal vision, can even see the marine hero Garp on the platform turret, wearing the Justice cloak. Obviously he is the leader this time. The Kaido Pirate Regiment's chances of survival are slim. Because of the special reason of the emergency coating, they didn't have enough preparation. In about half an hour, they need to float to the surface of the sea to fill with oxygen, otherwise, the entire fleet will be buried in the depths of the sea due to suffocation. Mariehua, at the moment, is a different sign. Due to the sudden attack of the Edo Tensei army, the entire Mariehua is almost in ruins. There are countless strong people gathered in Mariehua, and there are many Vice Admiral level characters, and some with strength comparable to Admiral occasionally pass by. But in the face of the Edo Tensei army with an immortal body, they can only look and sigh. The powerful and strange body, no matter how many times it is destroyed and crushed, will be repaired again without limit. And this group of human beings is constantly consuming their physical strength, so the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars, the secret card designed by Vegapunk a few years ago, finally bound this group of monsters, but it still can't kill them, it can only restrict their movements. No wonder the Edo Tensei army can't break through. According to their strength, it is indeed impossible. Staring at the huge cage in the distance, the doubts in Dustless's eyes disappeared, and he nodded slightly. Breaking through it with the strength of a vice admiral is indeed a fool's dream. During the War of the Best, the Marine also surrounded the Whitebeard pirates with this thing, restricting them to a narrow range of space, and then Admiral Akainu launched the unique skill Meteor Volcano to annihilate them. With these special mysterious substances in front of him, even Whitebeard can't break his defense, let alone this group of Vice Admiral level Edo Tensei army. Chapter 536. What he saw was a cage composed of countless white walls. It was several meters high, and the surface was extremely smooth. There was no possibility of climbing. Above it was a group of important members of the world government. They stared at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage in surprise. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Some of the people who had fallen had fought side by side with them. The cage included the former Navy Fleet Admiral, the current world government Commander Kong. Touching his chin, he looked down at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage. His eyes flashed with regret and killing intent. And from time to time, there was a flash of brilliance in his eyes. Playing with the flesh of the dead, the controller behind is so despicable and cold. Admiral Kong's killing intent was awe-inspiring, and the chill in his mouth froze the air in front of him. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Among these undead army, there were people from the same era as him, and they even carried out missions together in some periods. Commander Kong, it's meaningless to be angry now. I know you're very sad and I feel the same way. My former companions are among these walking corpses. The fat, strange-looking figure beside him said. Looking closely, this person was the guest of honor of the world government, Vegapunk. The most important plot at the moment should be to discuss how to clean up this group of people who have died. They have been killed and injured once, and they will be killed and injured again in the future. I'm sorry, Vegapunk said with complex emotions, and his tone was apologetic. Among these reincarnated Edo Tensei army, there were many scientists who helped him in the past. He didn't expect to be able to meet his old friends again today, but in such a complicated and awkward situation. You're right, Professor. Right now we need to discuss how to deal with this group of undying zombies. The other problems are not important. Otherwise, the 5 of them will find trouble with me. Marshal Kong nodded his head seriously. His tone was humble, and there was no sense of superiority at all. Because even if Vegapunk's hands were weak, the power exerted by his brain was far more useful than him, the commander of the army. The commander of the army could be replaced by another one, but Vegapunk was the only one in the world. A scientist will always be a scientist. With a complicated and lost sigh, looking at his reincarnated companions below, Admiral Kong had mixed feelings. At the same time, he sneered at Vegapunk next to him. Among these dead people, many of them were used as human subjects for his experiments. What bullsh**t #1 scientist, he's actually no different from that executioner Caesar. Glancing at the fanatical Vegapunk, Soren cursed in his heart. Without even thinking about it, Commander Kong knew that once these reincarnated dead people fell into the hands of Vegapunk, they would be pushed to the operating table for dissection. The only difference between Caesar and Vegapunk was that the former used civilians for experiments, while Vegapunk used prisoners for experiments. It was not difficult to tell that these dead people had lost their consciousness from their screams. If they fell into the hands of Vegapunk, he would be even more unscrupulous. If these people can be used by the government, it's just a matter of time before the pirates of the world are defeated. Fleet Admiral Kong said with a little longing in his eyes. A team composed of a large number of immortal lieutenant generals could easily sweep across the world. Even the Yonko could only nurse a grievance. That's for sure. Vegapunk smiled with exultation, and his crazy laughter was crazy. Scientists are like this. Sometimes human ethics and secular bottom lines are worthless in their eyes. And sometimes they also talk about benevolence and righteousness, making a great image of saving the world. Just as Chief Commander Kong and Vegapunk were discussing how to deal with this group of Edo Tensei army, in the cage below, a certain crazy Edo Tensei army suddenly calmed down, as if it had regained consciousness, and its eyes had some clarity. This body is still so weak that it can't be complimented. Dustless, who was secretly controlling his consciousness, smiled with a tangled smile. His strength seemed to be all sealed, and he could only exert less than 1% of his body. Edo Tensei was not the 6 paths of pain, and it was not easy to control it for the first time, and his strength was greatly suppressed. It should be no problem to kill him at this distance. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked up at the top of the cage, Vegapunk, who was discussing with Admiral Kong, and his eyes flashed with a gloomy and piercing murderous intent. This Vegapunk's own strength is slag, but the power he exerts is countless times stronger than that of a marine admiral, and it is extremely difficult to ignore him. Dustless quietly condensed power in his calf, and photons secretly surged between his calf. Relying on this fragile body, Dustless can't exert much strength. At most, he is equal to a vice admiral, and it is no problem to kill Vegapunk. After all, he is only a mortal, and the inventions he creates are shocking, but his own strength is no different from normal human beings. Light speed kick. With the roar falling, the light condensed in his calf suddenly flew out and swept straight towards the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Boom boom boom, the ear-piercing roar of the explosion resounded, and a huge fireball slowly rose into the air, and the destructive blazing heat waves spread and swept all of Mariehua. This damned wall is ridiculously hard. He thought that these cages that imprison the Edo Tensei army would be destroyed, but they only left scorching traces and some irregular depressions. He raised his eyebrows and then looked expectantly at the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Admiral Kong was unscathed, but the clothes on his upper body had been torn, revealing a strong physique. As for Vegapunk, he was much more embarrassed. Go and call the doctor. Admiral Kong glared fiercely at the reincarnated dead in the cage, and shouted at the government personnel around him. At this moment, Vegapunk was quite miserable. His right arm had been melted by the blazing heat, and his whole body was burned beyond recognition. He was only breathing weakly. Chapter 537. Commander Kong's old face was livid as he looked at the half-dead Vegapunk. Although he was extremely happy, he still felt a sense of shame. He, the commander-in-chief of the entire army, was right in front of him, but someone ignored his existence and attacked Vegapunk, an important person, in front of him. The most terrible thing was that it was easy to succeed. Although he protected Vegapunk's life with his own body at the critical moment, Vegapunk's half-dead state was almost the same as having one foot in the underworld. Seeing that Vegapunk was injured, Mariehua's doctors swarmed over and hurriedly put him on a stretcher and carried him back for emergency treatment. If he can't be rescued, they are likely to be buried with him. It's a pity. The Edo Tensei powerhouse controlled by Dustless sighed helplessly. This temporary body can exert such a strong power is already the limit. Boom. A powerful figure galloped over, and the heavy wrist force instantly shattered the head of the reincarnated powerhouse, and the broken debris slowly fell to the ground like snow. In just the blink of an eye, it was restored. Glancing over, it was Commander Kong who was full of murderous intent. Due to excessive rage, even the sides of his temples and the blue veins on his forehead could be seen. It seems that you are different from those zombies. His cold eyes were as sharp as a knife. Staring at the corpse of the Edo Tensei controlled by Dustless, Commander Kong gritted his teeth and said with hatred, "Your courage is not small big enough. How dare you kill someone in front of me? Do you know who he is? If Vegapunk was someone else, it would be fine, but the key is that this guy is too important. Most of the technological inventions of the government and the Navy were made by him. If he is killed..." Thinking of this, Commander Kong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. "Of course I know who he is." The corpse controlled by Dustless smiled and said with a playful look on his face, "The #1 scientist of the world government. If he didn't have this title, in all fairness, I really wouldn't attack him." Immediately, his eyes stared at Commander Kong and circled him. After which he seriously said, "Apart from this, I also wanted to test the strength of the legendary commander of the entire army. It is indeed similar to what I had expected. His strength is slightly better than 100 Beast Kaido, one of the Yonko, and he is enough to fight Whitebeard head-on." Just a moment ago, Dustless was able to see the strength of the commander. The only person who dared to fight him alone was probably the domineering Garp. This guy is already so old, and his body is ridiculously tough. He was able to remain unscathed even after taking a direct hit from the light speed kick. Nodding slightly, Dustless could even assert that the hardness of Commander Kong's body was the strongest person he had ever seen. This was probably the origin of his Steelbones nickname. He didn't have the Fruit's ability, and he had completely relied on his extreme haki to train his body into a body of steel. In this aspect, he was very similar to the hero Garp. Both of them have superb armament haki. Even if you are immortal, I will kill you hundreds of times today. With red eyes, Commander Kong said angrily. He was originally the kind of soldier with an extremely irritable temper. He attacked Vegapunk first, and then continued to provoke him. Even if Commander Kong was as calm as a mountain, he was furious at this moment, and the raging fire burned his reason. If you can make me bleed, you win. Commander Kong disdainfully snorted and sneered. Commander Kong signaled to Dustless to secretly control the undead to come over. A zombie whose strength is only at the level of a vice admiral, or even lower than a vice admiral, is not worthy of his attention. Seeing that the zombie didn't move, Commander Kong was even more contemptuous. And then he saw that the zombie was making a strange handprint, as if he was afraid of himself. Commander Kong proudly said, "As long as you can force me back, you win. Attack with all your strength." Boom. Before Commander Kong's voice fell, a fist completely condensed from green trees broke through the ground, and Commander Kong, who was caught off guard, was blasted away. Boom. His body slammed into the special cage wall, leaving a faint dent. Commander Kong's body then fell to the ground, and there were obvious fist marks on his abdomen. Impossible. It is only at the level of a vice admiral. How can it exert the strength of an admiral? Commander Kong wiped the bloodstains from the corner of his mouth, and the bloodstains in his gums were clearly visible, and he was shocked. This group of undead zombies was still at the level of a vice admiral before, but now they suddenly attacked and broke out the strength of an admiral. How could he not be surprised? At the same time, his old face was burning with pain. He just boasted, and as a result he was beaten by brute force. He felt like he was being played. As the commander of the entire army of the world government, someone dared to play with him again and again. The reason is very simple, because the person has changed. The undead controlled by Dustless said casually, and his frivolous and cold tone was calm. All of this was under his control. By replacing the consciousness of the original Edo Tensei dead person with his consciousness, his combat power will naturally be greatly improved. However, this corpse is too weak, and it is only Edo Tensei, not Pain, who can control it freely, so its coordination ability is extremely poor, and it can only exert the strength of a quasi-admiral. Then his consciousness withdrew from the Edo Tensei puppet. This kind of unexpected sneak attack can only work once. Dustless has enough confidence in Commander Kong. At present, the strength that this temporary corpse can exert is only limited to the level of a quasi-admiral. Maybe it can kill Commander Kong, but Dustless is not in a leisurely mood. First, this old guy is not easy to deal with. Second, the purpose has been achieved, and there is no need to entangle at all. Second, there is an unexpected guest in Dustless's house. There is always someone better than you. Next time, if you are so careless, you may lose your life. In the boundless void, only a cold warning was left, full of strong magic, lingering in the sky for a long time without dispersing, and resounding in the ears of everyone in Mariehua. His cold gaze indifferently looked down at Princess Aji, full of indifference to life, as if silently telling that the beautiful woman in front of him was a puppet that could be trampled on at will, that he could ignore her dignity at will. Queen Aji's face was pale. She had not expected Dustless to be so cold and heartless. She looked up at his cold face, her eyes filled with unwillingness. She used all of her strength to try and stand up, but she was crushed by an even greater force. She could only kneel on the ground. Do you think that because your daughter is used by me, you can rely on this mother and son to be noble? Sitting leisurely on the sofa, Dustless looked at Consort Aji, who was kneeling on the ground with a pale face, and said contemptuously, "You, the consort of the Fishman Island, including your daughter Shirahoshi, are all playthings and slaves in my hands, that's all." Dustless's sharp pupils fell on Consort Aji's body, waiting for her reply. In fact, for Dustless, an ancient weapon like the Sea King, if he could have it, it would naturally be like adding wings to a tiger. Even if he did not have it, it would not be a big deal. No, master. Tears of humiliation jumped in the corner of her eyes, and she trembled in despair. At this moment, Consort Aji was pitiful. Dustless kept a cold eye on her from the beginning to the end, like an emotionless machine. He was not moved by the ridiculous tears. She was just a slave, and he spent billions of berries to buy her. Hearing that Consort Aji surrendered, Dustless withdrew the majestic pressure. Come here. He hooked his finger at Consort Aji, and the corner of his mouth raised a wicked smile. Consort Aji heard the words and clenched her fists, instinctively wanting to refuse. What kind of person is Dustless? She has a unique opinion. Then she remembered the mission she was carrying, and she gritted her teeth and walked over calmly. Standing in front of Dustless, she did not dare to put on the slightest airs of a consort. In front of the celestial dragons, her ridiculous identity will only increase the sense of laughter. Your master is not young anymore, and he will have a family and career in the future. Now you teach me the Enlightenment education before marriage. If not, I will not listen to what you are going to say next. Staring at Consort Aji playfully, Dustless did not care, and the threat in his tone was full. Hearing this, Consort Aji's face was pale. She, who was over 20 years old, naturally understood what this meant. The greed of the celestial dragons was world famous. She thought that Dustless was one of them, but now it seems that her previous ideas were too naive. I already have a daughter. Are you sure you want to occupy me? If you don't mind, I don't care. Gritting her teeth, Consort Aji chose to retreat in order to advance. Dustless sneered, looked at Consort Aji, and secretly scolded her stupidity. When she was pregnant with Shirahoshi, Dustless had already seen that she was still a virgin. Although he did not know the reason, he could be sure that she was still a virgin today. I certainly don't care, it's just a slave, it's fine to play with it. Secretly laughing, Dustless's casual words sent Consort Aji to hell. The blood flowing all over her body was drawn away, and her beautiful eyes were full of despair. Regardless of Consort Aji, Dustless threw her on the sofa rudely. Are you people of Tianlong so barbaric? Don't you know how to have fun? The panicked Consort Aji did not expect the change to be so fast. Like a frightened little white rabbit, she curled up into a ball, guarding against the wolf-like Dustless. Silly woman, are you an idiot? Or have you seen people of Tianlong who like to talk about love? Dustless, who had made up his mind to completely trample on the dignity of Consort Aji, showed no mercy. For this kind of insensible woman who always thought that she could change everything, only by completely sending her to hell could she recognize herself. Chapter 539. Looking at Consort Aji's face that was about to vomit blood, Dustless was secretly pleased. She wanted to retreat in order to advance, but he would not let Consort Aji get what she wanted. With her little tricks, it was no different from a fool's dream. Consort Aji's watery eyes were filled with killing intent. Her beautiful and delicate face was extremely gloomy. She did not expect that Dustless's taste would be so heavy even after she had made it so clear. He was much more shameless than she had imagined. Call me master. A bone-piercing cold light flashed in his eyes. Dustless aimed his palm at Consort Aji. A majestic repulsive force shot out from his hand, locking onto Consort Aji. Ka. His expensive clothes instantly exploded into pieces. His cold eyes were emotionless. He looked at the panicked Consort Aji like a stray dog. Dustless's face was cold. Seeing Consort Aji's eyes oozing with sparkling tears, Dustless's unshakable heart did not change. This kind of person was not worthy of his attention. In addition, those who dared to resist had to pay the price. This little woman's temperament is not bad. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes lit up. His mind flashed. Consort Aji's natural and noble temperament made one's imagination run wild. Suddenly feeling her body turn cold, Consort Aji glared at Dustless in anger. The killing intent between her brows was clearly visible. She did not expect Dustless to be such a dirty and despicable person. Dustless stood silently in front of Consort Aji. He looked at her with a mocking expression. His mocking expression was no different from watching a clown's performance. You forced me to do this. The quick-witted Princess Aji's pretty face was resolute. She decisively picked up the fruit knife on the stone table and pressed it against her snow-white neck. Her cold eyes were filled with determination. She silently said, "If you look at me one more time, I will kill myself." However, Wuxia passed by with a smile. He was extremely calm and emotionless. His eyes were filled with indifference towards Princess Aji. He continued to stare at her without turning away. Your eyesight is not bad. Nodding slightly, Dustless remained unmoved. His invasive gaze circled around her. Every inch of Princess Aji's body entered Dustless's eyes. You want to fight me? This is interesting. Unfortunately, you chose the wrong person. This time, not only will I make you obediently put down your knife, I will also make you deliver yourself to me. Dustless said with a confident smile. He did not care about Princess Aji's threat at all. Automatically come to the door? In your dreams. Glaring fiercely at Dustless, Princess Aji showed no sign of weakness. His calm eyes stared straight at Princess Aji's naked body. Princess Aji, who was angry out of humiliation, trembled and pressed against her throat. There were obvious bloodstains. Unable to endure this vicious gaze, Consort Aji was just about to commit suicide when Dustless's light voice suddenly rang out, causing Consort Aji's movements to abruptly freeze. If you want to be the biggest sinner in the history of the Fishman Island since its establishment, you can kill yourself. Sitting on the sofa opposite Princess Aji calmly and drinking coffee calmly, Dustless's tone carried a warning meaning. Princess Aji sneered. She no longer had any attachments. Living was a sin for her. As a respected princess of the Fishman Island, she was secretly a slave of the people of Tianlong. Moreover, she had been humiliated by them time and time again. Instead of dragging out an ignoble existence, she might as well die and end everything. Anyway, living was suffering anyway. If I remember correctly, a few years ago, the Fishman Island was sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates. When Princess Aji was discouraged, Dustless's words made her stunned. Her eyebrows squeezed together, and she was keenly aware that there was more to Dustless's words. Then she remembered Dustless's cold and bloodthirsty character. Her breathing stagnated, and her fists clenched tightly. Others may not be so crazy, but according to the Tianlong people's way of doing things, it is indeed possible to do such a crazy thing. It seems that you have guessed my thoughts. With a smile on his mouth, Dustless smiled gloomily, and the space in the villa was faintly frozen. He said coldly, "Yes, as you think, you can commit suicide, but this account, I will count on the head of the Fishman Island. At that time, I will crush the entire Fishman Island and completely make the Fishman Island disappear from this planet, and the Fishman race will be swept into the garbage dump of history." When the voice fell, the entire villa had condensed into ice, and the surroundings were frozen. Dustless's eyes also turned scarlet, like an apostle from hell, and the smell of blood was overwhelming. Princess Aji's body trembled uncontrollably. She was abandoned by the whole world. She was confused, and she stared at Dustless's face in fear. She suppressed the panic in her heart and asked, "The Fishman Island has nothing to do with you and me. Why do you want to kill me?" "Bullshit." Dustless sneered again and again, and his words made Princess Aji speechless. He said sarcastically, "A few years ago, the Fishman Island was sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates, and it can be regarded as joining the evil pirate side. As a person of Tianlong, I destroy your Fishman race in the name of absolute justice, to punish evil and promote good. On the one hand, the Fishman Island has been sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates, and on the other hand, they want to be protected by the world government and coexist peacefully with humans. Do you still want to kill yourself now?" Suddenly, he stood up and looked down at Princess Aji from a winner's point of view, and said coldly, "It is undeniable that everyone is free, but you, as my slave, want to resist me. You have to pay an equal price." After a long silence, seeing Princess Aji put down the fruit knife with tears on her face, Dustless saw the smug smile on the corner of his mouth. Women, sometimes they are so easy to deal with. Falling in love is a time-consuming and troublesome process, and he has no time. The process is despicable and shameless, but it is far more reliable than anything. If you don't want the Fishman Island to be destroyed, get over here. Princess Aji nodded mechanically. Her eyes were lifeless. She walked in front of Wuxia like a walking corpse. Her appearance of letting him pick her was pitiful. "Well, as I said before, you still take the initiative to come to me." Chapter 540. Princess Aji staggered in front of Dustless. All the bones in her body were sucked out. It was extremely difficult for her to even take a step. She staggered left and right. Her watery eyes were filled with tears. She tried to win Dustless's sympathy. Unfortunately, Princess Aji was destined to be defeated. Dustless, who was indifferent by nature, was completely immune to those laughable tears. She then quietly knelt in front of Dustless. Her eyes were filled with despair. Your awareness as a slave is not bad. A king and a princess. Looking down at Princess Aji, Dustless stroked his smooth chin. He was a little smug. Boa Hancock, the future king, was his slave. The princess of Fishman Island was still his slave. This was the benefit of the powerful power of the people of Tianlong. Staring at Princess Aji in front of him with bright eyes, Dustless's steady breathing also became heavy. While he was panting and daydreaming, Princess Aji's painful voice sounded first. In this case, you will let Fishman Island go, right? Princess Aji muttered softly. She raised her head slightly. Her limpid eyes carefully watched Dustless. Even so, the firmness in her tone was deeply moving. Stupid woman with big breasts and no brain. Dustless shook his head hopelessly. This kind of stupid woman was naive. She had done enough for Fishman Island, but in the end, she still died in the hands of her own people. The ending could be said to be extremely tragic. She worked hard for Fishman Island for a short life, but in the end, she died in the hands of her own people. This was the biggest irony and stain to her. Of course, no problem. Patting his chest, he guaranteed. Dustless was abnormally serious. However, his evasive eyes were not flattering. Clearly, he had a cunning mind. He chose to be perfunctory with Princess Aji. Immediately, his line of sight once again revolved around the body of Princess Aji. Wu Chun, who had not eaten meat for several months, was also impatient. As the saying goes, food and lust are human nature. This is human nature, and there is no need to hide it. Although Wu Chun had shown a pure heart and few desires before, it did not mean that he was a monk who did not approach women. Regardless of Princess Aji, he pounced on her like a wolf or a tiger. The next morning, the sun was high in the sky and there were no clouds in the sky. It was a sunny day with a gentle breeze. Dustless rubbed his sleepy eyes. His expression was extremely lazy. A ray of dazzling sunlight immediately shone into his eyes. He subconsciously used his hands to shield his eyes. Suddenly, he felt his arm being clamped by soft and smooth skin. Dustless was slightly stunned. He turned his head and saw the pale-faced Princess Odoheim. At this moment, her arms were tightly gripping Dustless's left arm, as if she was afraid that Dustless would sneak away and would not let go. This untouchable woman looks aloof on the surface, but inside, she coincides with Huey G. They are both extremely exuberant women. Dustless chuckled and couldn't help but compare Princess Aji to Huey G. It was precisely because they usually maintained their noble side that they sometimes felt unusually lonely in their hearts. Once this accumulated pressure was released, the wildness that they displayed after giving up their self-esteem would cause others to raise their eyebrows. Time passed slowly. After a long time, Princess Odoheim opened her eyes. Dustless smiled and looked at her slyly like a fox. Princess Odoheim was a shy person with a thin face. Her small face suddenly turned red like an apple, which was very cute. You will stay in Mariehua in the future. Fishman Island, that is not a place you should set foot in. Suddenly realizing that Princess Odoheim would soon fall, Dustless said faintly. His tone carried an unquestionable order. Returning to Fishman Island would only lead to a dead end. It was just an order from a superior to a subordinate, and there was no room for maneuver. If I remember correctly, Princess Odoheim will soon be assassinated by Hody Jones. Staying in Mariehua is boring, but it can guarantee her life, and Dustless doesn't want her to appear again. Shirahoshi's way of awakening Neptune is too extreme, and the slightest deviation may lead to the destruction of the plan. You heartless little master. The words on the tip of her tongue were stared back by Dustless's cold eyes. Princess Odoheim quickly changed her words. She knew the end of the initiative to provoke Dustless. The despair of not being able to die was devastating. You promised to let go of Fishman Island. Do you want to go back on your word now? Princess Otoheim still refused to give up. The gradual decline of Fishman Island must be changed by her own hands. Fishmen can't live in the dark depths of the sea all their lives. Idiot woman, on the one hand, you are colluding with Whitebeard, and at the same time, you want the protection of the world government. You can't have the best of both worlds. After tidying up his slightly messy clothes, Dustless stared at the distant sea and whispered, "There is no good thing in the world that can have the best of both worlds. On the one hand, it is impossible to get the protection of the world government, and on the other hand, it is impossible to get the protection of Whitebeard. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can only choose one of the two. In that case, I will return to Fishman Island immediately." Staring at Dustless's back, Princess Otoheim was determined. Hearing this, Dustless just turned his head contemptuously and sneered at the woman who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. "I said let go of Fishman Island, but I didn't say let go of you. You are still my slave. Without my permission, you can't go anywhere." Princess Otoheim just sneered again and again. Her legs were long on her body. She could go wherever she wanted. Dustless had no right to stop her. Then, ignoring Dustless's strange look, she walked gracefully toward the dark corridor. "At least take a look at these things before you leave. Otherwise you may regret it." A mischievous evil smile jumped out from Dustless's mouth. There were suddenly a few more photos on the exquisite table, which were collected by Dustless. Princess Otoheim's footsteps suddenly stopped, and then she turned around suspiciously. The face of the table instantly attracted her attention. Her beautiful face suddenly straightened and turned purple. She glared at Dustless. In her life, she had never seen such a shameless person. Chapter 541. Dustless still vaguely remembers that Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks had a sword competition, and the day of becoming a legend was close at hand. As for the reason for the sword competition, he rarely heard of it. All in all, this is the best opportunity to plot against Red Hair Shanks. He doesn't know if he can successfully kill him, but at least he can give him an unforgettable lesson. The heroic red-haired Shanks had a well-known weakness. He was a loyal and righteous man. Are the crew members of Red Hair Shanks imprisoned in the deep-sea prison? Dustless asked in a hoarse and low voice, his tone full of killing intent. Yes, they are all imprisoned on the 6th floor of Impel Down. Although White Zetsa didn't know why, he still answered truthfully. Silently nodding, he suddenly felt that the old man Garp was much kinder and more lovely. Using the crew members to threaten the other party, this kind of despicable and dirty thing is not something he would do. The deep-sea prison, it is dark all year round, bottomless and suffocating. Since the last time Hawkeye and Doflamingo robbed Caesar from the prison, the defense of the deep-sea prison has been strengthened and transformed, using materials several times harder than the original. The cold and wet 6th floor of hell, eternal hell. This is the lowest floor of the deep-sea prison, filled with a nauseating stench. The flowing air is full of depression. Every time the lungs are inhaled, the whole body will be heavier, like an invisible mountain on the back. The figures shuttling in the darkness are vague. Sure enough, it's a place where the strong gather. The majestic perception spread out. The prisoners of the entire eternal hell were in his eyes. Dustless's tone was raised a lot, with a lot of emotion. No wonder Blackbeard chose his companions here. Several powerful auras immediately attracted Dustless's attention. Many vicious pirates in history were secretly imprisoned here, living a dark life. Ah, bastard who is so bold, disturbing my sleep. This kind of delicate prisoner can also be imprisoned on the 6th floor. Hey, it seems wrong. Why is that guy not even wearing a handcuff? Many powerful pirates noticed that someone was unscrupulously spying. They woke up from their sleep, opened their eyes, and looked at the young figure in front of them in horror. His slightly disheveled black hair, even though the surrounding space was filled with black, his pair of eyes that were as bright as the stars were still so eye-catching. What makes these pirates most envious and surprised is that this guy can come in without handcuffs. As such, his identity was obvious. He was definitely a member of the government. Ignoring the curious eyes around him, Dustless went straight into the depths of the dark space. Come, I will tear you apart immediately. Hehe. Such a delicate government official can enter the eternal hell. Hehe. I'm afraid that his status is beyond imagination. Let me go, let me go. I'll kill this little white face, haha. The original dead space was replaced by laughter, and the pirates in the prison ridiculed Dustless, their faces full of contempt. In their eyes, Dustless is the kind of incompetent waste who relies on his identity. You people better sleep for me. His eyes quietly spread. Dustless's eyes were replaced by a cold light. His pupils suddenly enlarged, and invisible energy fluctuations burst out from his body. It was just a short moment, and the prison, which was still noisy, suddenly became silent. Looking around, more than 80% of the people had turbid eyes. Their faces were full of horror. Their bodies were uncontrollably foaming, and they were directly stunned by some mysterious force. Only a very small number of people resisted the erosion of Haushikahaki. Most of these people were the future crew of Blackbeard, as well as some rumored pirates. They all belonged to the period when Roger dominated. He didn't know how long it took before he came to the fence where the red-haired crew was imprisoned. Lewis South, this is the person you want to see, but he is an extremely dangerous person, and it is not recommended for you to go in and contact him. If you want to enter here safely, you must use the identity of a celestial dragon. In the face of the descendant of the Creator, these jailers are more affectionate than their own father. Don't talk nonsense, open it for me. Dustless waved his hand impatiently. The jailer's face was stiff, but he still took out the key. Even if he was convicted, it was a matter of the future. If he offended Dustless now, he maybe spilled blood on the spot. Kakaka. The roar of the rolling chain sounded, and the cell was opened in the blink of an eye. Dustless walked in, and his eyes fell directly on the figure in the darkness. His tone was a little magnetic, like the conversation between old friends. Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he didn't expect that it was him who was caught. I heard that the crew of the Akagami Red Hair pirates were caught by Hero Vice Admiral Garp. But to be honest, I didn't expect it to be you. His sharp eyes stared straight at the figure sleeping leisurely on the bed. It was extremely difficult for Dustless not to know the unprecedented person in front of him. Known as the person with the highest IQ, he is also the vice captain of the Akagami Red Hair pirates, Ben Beckman. Don't talk to others in such a familiar tone. Sorry, you are not welcome here. A light voice resounded through the dark and silent space, and Ben Beckman said with a tone of surprise and surprise. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled and brushed it off. Although I don't know what the Akagami Red Hair pirates are up to, but one thing is certain, you should have been caught deliberately, right? Although it was a guess, Dustless was very sure. Ben Beckman's strength and mind are 1 in a million, and the possibility of catching him alive is 0. And Dustless doesn't think he is the kind of person who is caught alive. Although he is now imprisoned in the deep-sea prison, Dustless is convinced that he has an ulterior motive. Chapter 542. Beckman's expressionless cheeks loosened, and his eyes flashed with hidden killing intent. Even though it was fleeting, it was still perceived by Dustless. The killing intent was like a flood. Even if it was a tiny and weak water flow, it was still flowing out. Even if the concealment was flawless, it still couldn't escape Wu Chen's discerning eyes and his abnormal perceptive power. The net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. Everyone actually had this kind of unrealistic fantasy, and Wu Chen was no exception. The only difference was that he seemed to have woken up from a dream now, and he was adept at overlooking the overall development from the perspective of a bystander. And then he took advantage of the situation to lead the situation to a favorable situation for himself. I'm not interested in the conspiracy of your Akagami Red Hair pirates, and I'm not interested in exploring. Looking down at the unmoved Beckman, Dustless's expression turned gloomy, and his eyes emitted a threatening chill. But now I can be sure that you, who are now wearing a collar, are my prey. The moment his voice fell, an invisible pressure enveloped him. Dustless felt cold all over, and there was a sense of suffocation. He was keenly aware that a gloomy killing intent was locked on him. Looking up, it was Beckman who opened his eyes and was full of killing intent. The Akagami Red Hair Pirates are really crouching tigers and hidden dragons. This young vice captain is strong enough to compete with the highest battle admiral of the marine, and even has an advantage over the admiral. Turning a deaf ear to the killing intent that was locked on him, Dustless speculated in his heart, and at the same time, he was sure that Beckman was deliberately throwing himself into the tiger's mouth. Perhaps in a head-on confrontation, Garp can destroy the admiral of the marine headquarters, but if he wants to capture the admiral by himself, it's more difficult, not to mention there's red hair Shanks. Beckman's thoughts were meticulous and meticulous. Everything he did was watertight. Sometimes, intelligence was more lethal than pure strength. As the most honorable celestial dragon in the world, you came all the way here to see a prisoner like me. Your purpose and thoughts are not simple, Beckman said, emphasizing the words celestial dragon, as he locked his eyes on Dustless. He had clearly heard the warden's respectful tone, and the word saint used by him. Coupled with the fact that Shanks had once told Beckman about Dustless's appearance, he had a vague idea of Dustless's identity. Not pure? This problem is no longer important, but one thing is certain. Your Akagami red hair. Pirates are about to be in big trouble. Dustless suddenly raised his voice by quite a few decibels, and said with a mocking tone, "What intentions you have, it doesn't matter to me. In any case, the initiator of this unprecedented crisis is you, Ben Beckman." Clang, clang, clang. The roar of steel. In the dark space, a hazy black shadow swooped down, agile and flawless, without any loopholes. Dustless's left eye calmly entered the Rinnegan Sharingan mode, and 9 mysterious Tomo hung on the purple base of the bewitching eye, strange and unpredictable. Under the vision of the Rinnegan, the dark environment was as bright as day, and nothing could be hidden. Beckman's limbs were wrapped in thick iron chains, and they were as heavy as 1,000 pounds, binding him. However, even so, he still moved freely and rushed to Dustless. Staring at the attacking shadow, Dustless's mouth raised a slight sly smile, and the simple bewitching Rinnegan also swayed with faint ripples. You want to kill me? Even Shanks doesn't have the confidence to do so, let alone you. The pupil suddenly widened, and the faint ripples in the Rinnegan Sharingan expanded rapidly and spread to the entire eye socket in an instant. Beckman, who was impacted by the mysterious energy, suddenly moved as slow as a turtle crawling, full of flaws. Bang! Seeing this, Dustless smiled contemptuously, then swooped up and kicked Beckman away. The latter hit the thick wall powerlessly, and his face was as pale as paper, with obvious bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. You bastard! Beckman opened his eyes painfully and stared at Dustless, murderous intent. In that instant, all the movements of his body, the blood flowing in his body, and even the thinking ability of his brain, all stopped and imprisoned in an instant. Or to put it more accurately, the whole world was affected by the mysterious evil eye and stopped for a moment. Taking advantage of this short gap, Dustless attacked him. You want to take my life in this state? Stupid man who doesn't know his own limits. Looking down at Beckman emotionlessly, Dustless coldly raised his right hand, and the tip of his thumb condensed a golden beam of light. The light that was ready to shoot was invincible, and could easily penetrate a human body. Laser. Whiz whiz whiz. 5 fingers shot out at the same time, and a rainstorm-like dense light flew out. Beckman's body was turned into a sieve in the blink of an eye, and dozens of burn holes appeared out of thin air. Most of the scars were concentrated on the limbs of the body, and Dustless deliberately avoided the fatal parts of the internal organs. In this way, no matter what plan you have, you will have to carry it out after a while. At least you can only act when the injury in front of you recovers. Dustless stared blankly at the dying Beckman, and chuckled. His indifferent eyes swept across Beckman's body, and Dustless then turned and walked away. When he was about to step into the cell, he suddenly looked back and looked at Beckman, whose eyes were cloudy, and was about to fall into a coma. The corners of his mouth lifted into a cold arc of expectation. Regardless of whether he could hear it or not, his words rang through the dark and cold space. Akagami red hair. Pirates killing each other, this drama can't be missed. When Dustless stepped out of the cell, the jailers and Impel Down hurriedly rushed to treat Beckman. Marine headquarters told them that Beckman was an important prisoner, and they couldn't afford to lose him. Dustless is a Tenryubito, and Marine headquarters naturally can't punish him. When the time comes, it will be their group of lowest jailers. Chapter 543. Dustless really doesn't know the motive and purpose of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, and where the sword is pointing to. He is not a god, and Red Hair Shanks is a thoughtful man. The only thing that is certain is that no matter what happens in the end, Red Hair Shanks will not abandon his companions. Dustless only needs to wait for the rabbit. Although the method is very stubborn, the effect is immediate. Hastily leaving Impel Down, a place filled with smoke, he deliberately took a detour to look at the murderer, Shiryu of the Rain. However, this guy was like a sculpture. His whole body was full of coldness and isolation. He just looked at Dustless and continued to sleep like a prince, completely treating him as heir. Time flew by like a white steed. By the time he came to his senses, a few months had already slipped through his fingers. 5 days ago, Hawkeye left without saying goodbye. According to Dustless's guess, it should be to settle things with Red Hair Shanks. After all, the relationship between Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks is known to the world. They are enemies and friends. Now that Hawkeye had taken refuge in Dustless, the two were bound to make a decision. Their previous relationship was likely to be completely severed because of this relationship, and they would go their separate ways. Dustless is more concerned about Ben Beckman in the deep-sea prison than the collision between Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks. This guy was inexplicably deliberately caught in Impel Down. It is absolutely impossible for him to repent. The probability of expecting this group of pirates to turn back and be saved is 0. There must be a demon when things are abnormal. This is the truth that the ancient sages have summed up after thousands of trials. Therefore, Dustless also sent White Zetsa's doppelganger to keep an eye on Impel Down's movements. Beckman also followed the rules. In addition to recuperating all day, there was no change day after day. During this time, Dustless's previous relaxed rhythm of life has been completely disrupted. After several months, Kagaya's lower abdomen has already swelled high. According to Dustless's speculation, she will be ready to give birth in the next few days. Naturally, Dustless, who used to only occasionally enter and exit the system world, now appears more frequently. This is not without benefits. After a long time, the cold relationship between Dustless and Kagaya has gradually warmed up recently. At least, they don't mock each other as before. In the systems world, it was always sunny and sunny. In the distance, on the sparkling lake, the ancient pavilions are clearly visible. The ancient vicissitudes of life, revealing the mysterious poetic and picturesque artistic conception. The trees and rocks are elegant and majestic. The two figures in the pavilion are clearly visible. Looking at them, it is Kagaya and Dustless. She looks a little strange, but she is very likable. His eyes quietly sized up the bloated figure in front of him. A faint smile appeared on Wu Chen's face. The figure he was observing was undoubtedly Kagaya. She was no longer as domineering and arrogant as before. Now Kagaya was dignified and quiet. Perhaps it was because of her maternal instincts. She smiled sweetly and appeared approachable. The goddess's oppression is also restrained, which is completely opposite to Dustless's impression of Kagaya. The world is impermanent. Seeing Kagaya's benevolent state, Dustless's heart was mixed, and he felt like he had not woken up from a dream. He glanced at the young life formed in Kagaya's belly. The past grievances and disputes can vanish because of the blessing of the child. You're right. Fate is indeed hard to fathom. Huey chimed in. Her light voice soothed one's heart and revealed a hint of helplessness. Dustless sighed and then walked forward to support Kagaya's body, knowing that she has paid too much for the child in her belly. Unlike before, Kagaya did not reject Dustless's embrace this time. Instead, she leaned on his shoulder and quietly nestled in Dustless's arms. Her white jade-like face enjoyed this unfamiliar smell very much. She snuggled into Dustless's arms like a lazy cat. I also didn't expect that I would become like today. Her soft tone was hesitant. She also had doubts about the future. She never thought that she would become like this one day. She looked at Dustless deeply and then said in a bitter and playful tone, Sometimes I even suspect that you used a technique that is far beyond Kodo Amatsukami on me, which caused me to become like this." Blinking her watery eyes, Kaguya looked at the calm Dustless. Her eyes were full of seriousness. She really had such doubts in the past. "I don't know that kind of technique, and am I that kind of person?" Dustless's head was hanging with black lines, and his face was full of helplessness. He glared at her. If Kaguya was not pregnant, he would definitely immediately teach her a lesson. It was true that emotional women have rich thoughts. His heart was as light as clouds. Dustless's cheeks burst into a smile. He was quite gratified that Kaguya could be so cheerful and optimistic. It also meant that Kaguya could accept him. To be fair, the change in Kaguya's temperament was indeed beyond Dustless's expectations. At present, it could only be attributed to Kaguya's motherly nature. Maybe after giving birth to the child, she would return to her previous unapproachable appearance. There was nothing wrong with building a good relationship with her now. "You must be thinking of something bad again." The questioning tone was unusually certain. Kaguya wrinkled her nose and said. She felt that Dustless's smile was a little strange, but she couldn't tell what exactly it was. Anyway, it was evil. She had a creepy feeling of being targeted by a cunning old fox. "Impossible. I'm just thinking about how to build a good relationship with her in the future." His little hand skillfully swept into Kaguya's lapel. Dustless's palm was like magic that penetrated into Kaguya's lower abdomen. He carefully stroked the young life that was brewing in her belly. "You scum." Kaguya's face collapsed. She ignored Dustless's astonishment and said coldly, "I'm pregnant for 10 months, and you still want to do that kind of dirty thing with me." As she said, she ignored Dustless's dull eyes and threw the truth-seeking jade over. Chapter 544. The duel between Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks naturally attracted pirates from all over the world to watch the fun. It was rare to see such a scene in decades. Groups of pirates were like cats smelling blood. They came from all directions, and came from thousands of miles away. No matter what, the nature of pirates has not changed. Of course, there are also some pirates with ulterior motives. Even Marines' undercover agents exist among them. Their motives are unknown. Boom boom boom, on the island in the distance, a huge straight black abyss appeared in the sky. The void was pulled by two strong forces, and turned into a dark crack, bottomless. Moreover, it was constantly swallowing the surrounding sky like a whale, rapidly expanding its area. This terrifying spatial buckle actually covered the entire island. Bang bang bang, a powerful wave of power swept through the world. And the roar was extremely oppressive. As far as the eye could see, the island in the distance was trembling and shaking. The entire sea was shaking along with the movement of the island. Many pirate groups just watched from a distance, not to mention setting foot on the island. They didn't even dare to get close for fear of being swallowed by the slash. The strongest collision between Red Hair Shanks and Hawkeye is very exciting, but you must be alive to watch it. In the center of the island, the ground was wantonly rewritten, and the strong majestic mountain became the object of bullying, fragile like withered leaves, and can only drift with the waves of energy fluctuations. As far as the eye could see, some of the mountains had already been flattened. The flashes of swords and sabers that flashed by were the natural enemies of these towering mountains. "This time, you have improved very quickly, Shanks." Hawkeye held the black sword and looked at Red Hair Shanks, who was obviously relaxed, and the surprise and astonishment in his tone was undisguised. Hearing this, Red Hair Shanks smiled and said, "You are not bad, my hawk." From the tone of the conversation between the two, it is not difficult to hear that the relationship between the two is more harmonious than the world thinks. As competitors, they also appreciate each other. "I thought my improvement was fast enough, but I didn't expect Shanks to be so fast." Hawkeye looked cautious, quietly looking at the narrow dark crack in the sky, and sighed in his heart. He was at a disadvantage when it came to the flexible application of Haushiko Haki. Inevitably, he remembered what Shanks had said to him before. In terms of pure swordsmanship, Shanks wasn't as good as Hawkeye, but when it came to pirates, Hawkeye wasn't as good as Shanks. "Why did you submit to that man?" You shouldn't be that kind of person, Hawkeye. Red-haired Shanks' face darkened as he asked in a hoarse voice. The two of them used to be best friends who shared everything with each other. But now, because of the intruder Dustless, a crack had appeared in their relationship that had been harmonious for many years. It had evolved into a duel where they had no choice but to gamble their lives. Dustless was the instigator, the one who stirred up trouble. Of course, it's to pursue the path of Sword Dao. Hawkeye replied calmly. For him, being a pirate or being a Shichibukai didn't matter. As long as he could set foot on the ultimate path of Kendo, pirates and marines were not important to him. You've changed. Looking at Hawkeye, Shanks said with regret. At the same time, the hatred in his heart towards Dustless increased by another degree. A like-minded friend had been easily turned over by Dustless. The red-haired Shanks' heart was filled with mixed feelings. He used to extend an olive branch to Hawkeye, but he was finally rejected by the latter. Now Hawkeye joined Dustless's forces, which was tantamount to indirectly slapping his face. It's you, Shanks. From beginning to end, my goal is to pursue the peak of Kendo. Hawkeye's black sword flashed with a cold light. His eyes were sharper than an eagle's as he stared at the red-haired Shanks. With a casual swing of his hand, a long and narrow crack appeared on the ground. Whiz! Shanks didn't show any weakness when he saw this, and the sword in his hand fell, and the air was cut through. And then the crimson chop raged along the tip of the sword. Boom, boom, boom. The two powerful forces inevitably collided, and the ground under their feet was always bullied. And a huge pit suddenly appeared, occupying 1/5 of the island area. This is a duel between the top former, and when all the strength breaks out, an island can be annihilated at will. You still have that unrealistic idea, Shanks. Hawkeye's amber pupils saw through the inner secrets of Shanks, and he sneered. That man is not in the same dimension as us, Shanks. Seeing that his friend was so stubborn, Hawkeye heavily persuaded. Only by following the trend will you progress, and the consequences of going against the current will only be broken. Thinking of Wu Chen's influence that was both legal and illegal, Hawkeye Mihawk felt a wave of depression in his heart. His forehead faintly broke out in cold sweat, and he could not help but inhale cold air. His expression faintly showed fear. As a celestial dragon's, Dustless can mobilize power beyond imagination. Abandoning the Marine headquarters, and Doflamingo, these lackeys, not to mention, once the secretly created Pluton comes out, the consequences will be no less than a super earthquake in the world. And Dustless's own strength has also reached the realm of perfection. As for how deep his strength is, people who have seen him really burst out his full strength, I'm afraid that they have already reported to hell. That bastard. What kind of monster is he? The red-haired Shanks looked extremely gloomy, and when he saw Hawkeye's expression, his heart fell to the bottom of the valley, and his heart roared violently. He knew what kind of person Hawkeye was better than anyone else. The existence that can make Hawkeye, who is more arrogant than the sky, show fear. How strong is he? Shanks, I can tell you clearly that the probability of defeating that person by conventional means is 0, comma. Chapter 545. Dustless, who is far away in Mariehua, is different from ordinary people. He enjoys luxurious VIP treatment that the world should not have. Through a special projection Den Den Mushi, every move that happens can't escape his control. Does it affect everything? In the warm villa, Dustless muttered to himself. He glanced at the elegant Boa Hancock, and quietly sized up her bright and cold eyes. Unknowingly, Wuxia could see that she didn't care about life at all. Similarly, Hancock, as a maid, was also affected by Dustless's identity as a Tianlong person, and she gradually became indifferent to human life. The person who affected all of this was Dustless. After a while, it seemed that he had figured out the doubts that had been troubling him for a long time. Dustless's mouth suddenly raised an intriguing smile. Louis Southview. Hancock frowned and asked doubtfully. Dustless waved his hand indifferently, indicating that it was okay. Dustless suddenly remembered the trace of Princess Odoheim. For about half a month, Dustless didn't see her. It was like she evaporated out of thin air, and the whole person completely disappeared from Dustless's vision. Sister Odoheim has been very weak recently. It's all your fault. 1,000 coquettish, 100 coquettish, by coquettish, 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 because she had to bear Dustless's indifferent and ruthless torture, or simply trampling Princess Odoheim was already full of holes, and every day was like a year. Perhaps it was because they were both slaves and they could empathize with each other. Hancock and Princess Odoheim had nothing to say. During this period of time, when Hancock was half asleep in the middle of the night, she could often hear Princess Odoheim's unbearable torture and painful sobbing. She wanted to die, but didn't dare to die. She was full of despair for the future. Every time she thought of it, Hancock couldn't help but have goosebumps. She asked for it. Dustless smiled at Hancock's complaint. He had an expression that it had nothing to do with him. He could only blame Princess Odoheim for being insensible. If Consort Aji was tactful, Dustless would naturally choose to treat her with courtesy. However, that woman had beautiful dreams of saving Fishman Island from danger every day. Dustless could only let her better experience what it felt like to be better off dead. Only when one is in despair can one look at the world in a different way. At the same time, he looked at Hancock and said, "Also, I didn't expect your courage to be so much bigger than before. You even dare to complain to this young master. Crawl over here obediently, my little slave." The corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile, which was the complete opposite of the gentle Dustless from before. His eyes were filled with viciousness, and the ruthlessness of the people of Tianlong was fully displayed. Hancock's expression was stiff when she heard the words, but then she nodded silently. Then she crawled over gracefully. Her movements were skillful and agile. Obviously, she had done this many times. Hancock, who was kneeling in front of Dustless, raised her head with a charming and elegant smile on the corner of her mouth. Her bright eyes blinked with the intention of begging for mercy. "You are much more sensible than that woman who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Nodding with satisfaction, Dustless smiled and said. Hancock, who knew Dustless's temperament, naturally understood the teasing and deeper meaning in his tone. "That's for sure. I have been with you for a long time, and I know you much more than Sister Odoheim." Hancock heard the words and bloomed with a beautiful smile. She shook her head and looked at Dustless with her watery eyes. "Living in the same room with the people of Tianlong, you must first understand what kind of people they are. If you show your self-esteem in front of this group of people who think highly of themselves, you will only be trampled on by them." At some point in the past, Hancock thought that she was familiar enough with Dustless, and it was not too much to ask for some things. But who would have thought that Dustless would change his attitude faster than turning the page of a book? He trampled on her ridiculous self-esteem on the spot. Dustless's cold and indifferent eyes were unforgettable to Hancock. She still remembered that she was tortured by Dustless for a week and couldn't walk like a normal human being. It was because of this incident that Hancock learned to be more flexible. The way to live with the people of Tianlong is actually very simple. It can be summed up in 4 words: resign yourself to adversity. As long as you don't violate the will of Dustless, you can actually live in harmony. Sometimes you even make some excessive jokes, and he will laugh it off. On the contrary, if you violate the will of Dustless and provoke him again and again, just like Princess Odoheim, you will live a dark life that is worse than death. In the final analysis, Dustless is this kind of person from beginning to end. Those who obey will prosper, and those who resist will die. After completely submitting to him, Dustless often taught her about hockey and physical skills, and her strength improved very quickly. The consequence of resisting him is to live a life worse than death. Princess Odoheim is the most realistic portrayal of this. In the deep-sea prison of Impel Down, there is no sun all year round. There is only endless darkness and coldness. Isolation is the most realistic description of this place. The chance of getting out is almost zero. The only successful jailbreak in history is the Golden Lion Shiki, who is also known as one of the 3 legendary pirates, and the Pirate King Gold Roger. Even so, the price paid is great. Shiki lost 2 legs because of this. After today, there will be a successful jailbreak in the 6th floor of the Eternal Hell. In the dark cell where you can't see your fingers, Bright Eyes suddenly swept. The eyes were like torches, full of unfathomable reason and wisdom. Looking closely, it is the vice captain of the Akagami pirates, Ben Beckman. He suddenly stood up and looked at the black chains that bound his limbs. The contempt in his eyes was obvious. It seems that this black chain that is thicker than a human arm is as fragile as a rope. Chapter 546. These special black handcuffs are carefully made of sea stone. Once the ability user touches it, they will be powerless. Unless they cut off their limbs, the chance of escaping is almost zero. Beckman is not an ability user, and the effect of the sea stone handcuffs on him is greatly reduced. However, even so, it is not easy to escape. The hardness of sea stone is better than diamonds. It is impossible to escape without any effort. Only a peerless powerhouse like Whitebeard can break the sea stone handcuffs with brute force. Fortunately, Beckman expected all this in advance, and planned the steps of the escape in advance. Can I really control everything? I don't know what kind of expression you will have after I escape. I really look forward to it. In the dark cell, Beckman's face was full of reverie. His eyes were a little gray and empty. He seemed to be imagining what kind of expression Dustless would have after he knew that he had successfully escaped. Ka. Chong chong chong. His sharp teeth bit the bandages all over his body. Countless hard iron wires and various keys fell to the ground, making a crisp and pleasant sound. In fact, Beckman's injury had recovered a long time ago. Because of his year-round exercise, his physical recovery ability is far better than ordinary humans. He deliberately wrapped this bandage just to better hide the collection of equipment. Where the hell did you get these things? White Zetsu, who was responsible for monitoring Beckman, poked his head out of the ground. His eyes were enlarged several times. He looked at the various keys all over the ground in disbelief. He could not help but take a deep breath. Boom. Just as he was about to ask, a powerful force came head-on. White Zetsu snorted and his body was uncontrollably slammed against the thick wall. Before White Zetsu could counterattack, a strong and powerful hand grabbed White Zetsu's throat. He struggled with all his strength and could not escape the shackles of this big hand. He opened his eyes with difficulty. It was Beckman with cold eyes. Where did you get it? Beckman's gloomy cheeks were filled with ridicule. He said sarcastically, "Of course, the prison guards here sent it automatically. Do you think I brought it in to impel down? Or do you think you can escape through the ground?" Lifting White Zetsu with ease, Beckman revealed his strong physique. His bulging muscles were filled with explosive power. As the right-hand man of red hair shanks, his strength was extremely shocking. In a place like Impel Down, you have to do a body search before you come in. After several processes, it is impossible to quietly bring things in. If breaking out of prison was so easy, the Golden Lion Shurji would not have to cripple his own legs. Don't tell me you. Looking at Beckman in shock, White Zetsu's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He vaguely guessed how Beckman had obtained these tools. His face suddenly became gloomy. Looks like his subordinates aren't idiots. It's exactly what you imagined. Seeing Baizu wake up from his dream, Beckman smiled calmly. In Beckman's view, there were many practical and simple ways to see the light of day from Impel Down. The reason why you provoked Dustless, Sama, was just to sing a sad play. You deliberately got hurt by him to attract the attention of the prison doctors and get closer to them. After following Dustless for so long, White Zetsu had seen many things and immediately saw Beckman's intentions. He frowned and stared at the indifferent Beckman. He didn't expect this guy to be so anxious. Beckman was an important prisoner of Marine headquarters. He was used to catch the big fish of Akagami, red hair, pirates. Impel Down is not an idiot. It is impossible to let him die before he is used. When they learned that Beckman was seriously injured by Dustless, they immediately sent the prison doctors to give him emergency treatment. In addition, a large number of prison guards followed to prevent Beckman from suddenly attacking. As the vice captain of Yonko for Emperors, Even if he was seriously injured and fell to the ground, it was still dangerous. This is exactly what Ben Beckman dreamed of. In a small cell, once there are more people, the impossible becomes possible. Pirates are experts in stealing and swindling. It's extremely simple to steal the key unknowingly. Especially in a seriously injured state, he can also lower the guard of the prison guards. The stolen keys are also placed in the thick bandages wrapped around his body. The prison guards who lost the cell keys may not dare to speak out. The new guard is clear about rewards and punishments. Once they speak out, they will also be guilty of dereliction of duty. They will be imprisoned in a gloomy place like Impel Down. The key may just fall in some unknown place. There is no need to put themselves in prison. You are very smart, but there is one thing wrong. Seeing that White Zetsu saw through his plan at a glance, Beckman's eyes flashed with surprise and he said with some helplessness, I was not injured by accident and I was not the opponent of that guy. Red Hairshanks is not the opponent of Dustless. Beckman is not stupid enough to think that he can match Dustless. In the end, I just used that man to hurt me so that I could get in touch with more people. With a casual smile, Beckman said very simply. White Zetsu looked at Beckman. Even if he is an enemy, he can't help admiring him. It's simple to say, but the process behind it is extremely complicated. Not only must all unknown factors be calculated, but also everyone's mentality after the incident and how they will react. If the precise steps are wrong, the whole plan will collapse. Chat is over, goodbye Kaka. Easily twisting White Zetsu's neck, Beckman concentrated on testing the key. The keyhole of this chain is quite rough, and it's only a matter of time before it is opened. Kid, you're smart enough. You can see the light of day again. It's what Dustless expected. In a dark corner, White Zoo's main body sneered again and again. He looked at Beckman, who was concentrating like a clown. His face was full of contempt. Dustless had expected that this kid would escape from prison in some unknown way. Chapter 547. White Zetsu, who was spying in the dark, raised his mouth and shook his head disdainfully. Although Dustless didn't guess how he escaped from Impel Down, it was expected that he could escape from this deep-sea cage. You can leave Impel Down without anyone knowing. This is just your wishful thinking. Looking lightly at Beckman, who was concentrating on unlocking, White Zetsu's tone was full of frivolity. Everything that Beckman said to his clone just now was also passed into the ears of his main body. It's not that White Zetsu looks down on Beckman, but he thinks that this guy's idea is too ridiculous. A few months ago, his body had been touched by Dustless. This kid may not be aware of it now. He also has the strength to detect what Dustless did. Taking a deep look at Beckman, White Zetsu's main body also escaped to the surface and disappeared forever. Early the next morning, Wuxia, who was far away in Mariehua, also got up from Hancock's delicate body. The data of the body, which was enough to ride side by side with Ten Tails, was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Hancock was lying quietly on the bed, half dead and in a coma. Her breath was weak and her face was pale. Looking carefully at Hancock's delicate face, his cold eyes also showed some rare softness. Dustless quietly got out of bed and tidied up his clothes without disturbing her. Usually Hancock is responsible for this. Dustless is not a hard-hearted person. As long as she is loyal, he doesn't mind being honest with her. After a simple wash, he found some snacks to fill his stomach, and sat in the living room as usual to read the morning newspaper of the next day. It has been nearly a year since he came to this world, and reading newspapers every day has become a habit unconsciously. What caught his eye was the banner, which was the competition between Akagami and Hawkeye. This is interesting. Sure enough, a pirate is a pirate. Although Red Hairshanks is a different kind of pirate, the nature of a pirate is deeply rooted. Carefully reading the words in the newspaper, Dustless sneered. From the beginning to the end, Dustless didn't think that Red Hairshanks was a good person. Humans were all selfish. Although he appeared to be very cheerful, it didn't mean that he didn't have ambition. This was especially true when Hawkeye and Shanks went their separate ways. The relationship between the two was already broken, and they even started a life and death battle. Hawkeye's red hair was completely negated, so it was normal for him to use any tricks. Because from now on, it meant that the two of them would be on opposite sides. The red-haired man realized that Hawkeye had completely fallen into the devil's path, and it was not impossible for him to eliminate the root of the problem. Master Dustless. A voice rang out without any warning. White Zetsu broke out of the ground like a ghost. Ignoring White Zetsu's voice, Dustless carefully read the newspaper in his hand. Sometimes he frowned, and sometimes his eyes flashed. White Zetsu didn't appear. Seeing this, White Zetsu was speechless. He opened his mouth, but the words that were on the tip of his tongue were taken back. After thinking about it, it was a completely trivial matter. There was no need to be so anxious. It was just a Ben Beckman with a high IQ. There was no need to care so much. His boss, Red Hair Shanks, was just a clown, nothing more. About half an hour later, Dustless put down the newspaper in his hand and leaned on the soft sofa. His thumb rhythmically tapped on the crystal-clear stone table. That kid should have escaped, right? With a calm face, Dustless asked. He couldn't expect a big pirate like Beckman to walk into a trap. White Zetsu nodded slightly, recalling Beckman's strange but admirable escape plan. He told Dustless the whole story. Short-sighted smartass. After listening to White Zetsu's words, Dustless sneered. These contents were contributed by White Zetsu's body that was killed, so everything Beckman said fell into Dustless's ears. Are you going to blossom on both sides? According to Dustless's personal speculation, the reason why he chose Impel Down is estimated to take advantage of the battle between Red Hair Shanks and Hawkeye to make trouble and attract the attention of Marines. Red Hair and Hawkeye have a life and death battle on the island. The outer islands have many Marines deployed in ambush. As a 7 warlords of the sea, Hawkeye will certainly not be caught. Naturally, Red Hair Shanks went there. Indeed, it is estimated that Beckman's idea is to release the criminals in Impel Down to attract the attention of Marines and reduce the pressure on Red Hair Shanks. White Zetsu rationally analyzed. After the sword fight with Hawkeye, taking advantage of the siege of Red Hair pirates is likely to destroy them. Beckman will take advantage of the situation to set fire to Impel Down, which will certainly attract the attention of Marines. After all, there are some ferocious pirates in Impel Down, and the degree of cruelty is far more than Shanks. The Marines naturally know which one is more important. At that time, the ambushing Marines may stop the siege on Shanks and reinforce Impel Down. After all, Red Hair Shanks will not be an ordinary civilian. The cold storage butcher of Impel Down will do anything. In their eyes, life is equivalent to grass. I didn't see it before. It turned out that Red Hair was despicable beyond imagination. With a strange face, Dustless's view of Red Hair changed and then sighed. Everyone had two sides, positive and negative. Once his dark side was released, the destructive power it would cause would be far greater than his sunny side. Increasing the pressure might cause him to reveal his dark nature. But it's good that that guy can escape. I don't have to release him myself. Dustless sneered and his tone was cold. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. This ridiculous principle of bullshit is extremely pedantic. Only by using strong and powerful fists to deter the enemy and leave an indelible shadow in the other party's heart can Red Hair Shanks be afraid. Chapter 548. Staring at Dustless's handsome face, White Zetsu was depressed. Dustless's calm appearance was beyond his imagination. He is also the deputy captain of Yonko 4 emperors. Dustless's calm eyes seem to say that he is just a passerby. There is no need to worry about it. He underestimates Sengoku too much. Waving his hand, Dustless was too lazy to waste his breath. Since the last time Impel Down was breached by Doflamingo and Hawkeye, the danger and defense have greatly increased. Beckman can escape from prison himself, indicating that he is indeed clever, but he may not be able to help others. What's more, his eyes flashed with dark blue blood, and the temperature of the entire space fell into an ice cellar. Wu Chen spat out a frosty breath. The script I gave him has been completed. Beckman, the clown, can only follow the plot I planned for him. He doesn't have the power to do things beyond my expectations. At this point, Dustless's body had floated countless photons, all of which overflowed through the gaps outside the window. With a harsh roar, the void stretched into a straight beam of light, and Dustless's body disappeared. The direction is impelled down. Hey, let us out quickly. How did you get out, you bastard? We are all pirates, grasshoppers on the same rope. We share blessings and misfortunes. I used to admire you, the deputy captain of the Akagami pirates, Ben Beckman. Let me out and I will be your younger brother. The noisy and surprised roar resounded through the usually quiet eternal hell. Pairs of stunned eyes looked at Beckman, who was walking indifferently in the darkness, followed by a loud cry for help. As pirates, everyone should always support and help each other. Now that they are in the same wolf's den, they should abandon their old grievances and work together. It's hard for a clown to make a climate. The contempt in his eyes was fleeting, and Beckman didn't care. But even so, he still threw out the prison key that he stole. If he wanted to escape unscathed, he would need to borrow the strength of this group of thieves. Beckman couldn't do it alone. Hurriedly picking up the keys from the ground, the pirates couldn't wait to remove the shackles on their hands. Clearing his throat, Ben Beckman was about to speak freely about his escape plan. But the next change made the corner of his mouth twitch fiercely, and his old face gradually showed signs of darkening. I've always disliked you. Now the time to kill you has finally come. God has eyes. Same here, same here. I've been pissed at you for a long time. Even if I die, I'll drag you down to hell as a sacrifice for my crew members who died decades ago. Beckman was caught off guard by this sudden turn of events. This was the opposite of his expected plan. His head was full of black lines, and thousands of words surged from the bottom of his heart. He moved his lips, wanting to teach this group of people a lesson, but he still found it difficult to speak. Most of them had blood-red eyes, and the murderous intent they emitted was bone-chilling and despairing. It was obvious that they were serious. Their determination to not rest until one of them was dead and to destroy both jade and common stone made Beckman's expression change. Go to hell for me. Suddenly there was a turbulent wave of air behind him. Beckman noticed that the hatred of hatred was locked on him. His face flashed with anger, and he turned away without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. The place where he stood before was filled with dust and smoke, and there was a large pit on the solid ground. The force was extremely powerful and could easily smash normal humans into meat paste. You. Beckman glared at him, the anger in his eyes clearly visible. Just as Beckman was about to scold him for being heartless, he suddenly realized that this old face was unusually familiar. It was the prisoner locked up next to him, an old foe. When he was wandering in the sea with Akagami Red Hair, he also annihilated the pirate group in front of him. It was a long time ago. Beckman's face was extremely ugly, and he suddenly understood what Marine was trying to do. He should have deliberately arranged this. Marine's Fleet Admiral Sengoku is really not a fish in the pond. This move is vicious enough. Beckman's cold eyes spread and looked at the people around him. Beckman knew more about the ruthlessness of the Fleet Admiral. These people who were arranged in the same cell, or the next cell, before they were locked and impelled down, they were all enemies of water and fire. There was a saying that when enemies met, their eyes would turn red. It was better for them to stay put. If they really broke out of prison one day, it would be very difficult for these enemies to work together. It might even evolve into a scene like this where they killed each other. Beckman suddenly felt that his previous ideas were ridiculous. Not to mention others, even he had unknowingly stepped into the hatred karma set by Sengoku. Everyone, the grievances of the past are insignificant. The most important thing now is to escape. The powerful voice blended with the observation haki sunset in everyone's ears, but the effect was minimal. The pirates who were fighting still stared at each other with scarlet eyes. Most people take Beckman's words as words in their ears. The hatred accumulated over time can't be collected. Some enemies also have the idea of breaking the jar, and just want to kill the enemy. After all, the people in eternal hell are old pirates who are more than 50 years old. They have been imprisoned and impelled down for many years. Time has worn down their ambitions. If they can kill the enemy who killed their companions in the past, Their life will be worth it. A group of ordinary people with no vision. No wonder they were imprisoned and impelled down. The disappointment in his eyes was restrained. Beckman's momentum was awe-inspiring. His cold eyes stared at the former enemy, and he planned to quickly kill them and escape. He thought that he could use this group of like-minded people to scourge the marine and attract the attention of the world. Now it seems that it is nothing more than a dream. Instead of attracting the attention of the marine, he may be pulled into the hatred vortex carefully planned by Sengoku and be swallowed up. Chapter 549. Even if he was unwilling, Beckman could only endure. He had calculated everything, but he had miscalculated human nature. This group of pirates had endured for decades, and it was not something he could guess at will. In other words, he indirectly underestimated Fleet Admiral Sengoku and underestimated the Buddhist Sengoku known as the Wise Admiral. In the deepest part of Impel Down, the abnormality of the sixth layer, eternal hell, quickly attracted the attention of the jailers. A large number of strong people continued to gather here, and a large number of ambushing masters arrived in time. However, the scene in front of them made the group of jailers dumbfounded. Countless veteran pirates were killing each other, blood flowed like a river, the broken limbs were clearly visible, and the smell of blood was like purgatory on earth. The group of jailers became spectators, and were tragically ignored. Bastard! Aware that a large number of jailers were constantly coming, Beckman's calm heart splashed with ripples and flames. The previous escape method could be used once. If he was caught again, he would not be able to escape. Secretly peeping at the changes around him, Beckman's forehead was sweating uncontrollably, and his heart was heavy like a mountain. The jailers around him poured in intermittently, and continued to come from all directions. If he did not escape in time, once the iron walls surrounded him, it would be no different from a fool's dream to escape. His brain was working at a speed 10 times faster than usual. After a while, a faint smile appeared on his face. Without thinking, Beckman abandoned his opponent and jumped into the chaotic battle. Fishing in troubled water and completely stirring up the muddy water can turn the impossible into possible. At the same time, a special person also came to Impel Down. The destination was the sixth layer of Impel Down, eternal hell. The visitor was young and dressed quite casually. His indifferent eyes looked at the ruins around him. The prison was empty and there were no jailers. It seems that they are all in the eternal hell. Aware of the slight vibration under his feet, Dustless looked straight at the abyss below, where there were hysterical shouts from time to time, including violent and shocking power fluctuations. The deep-sea prison was faintly beating, and the scene was very shocking. Then the body ignored the existence of gravity and floated up easily, and fell like a stone into the sea. This dark and boundless tunnel is a shortcut to the sixth layer, eternal hell. Boom boom boom. Unlike before, the battle in the eternal hell had undergone drastic changes. Due to Beckman's participation, he had deliberately expanded the scale and scope of the battle, implicating the prison guards. The entire sixth floor of the infinite hell turned into a meat grinder for a moment. The dark ground was covered in the eerie glow of blood, which was full of omens and misfortune. The description of a river of blood was too shallow. Good chance. Suddenly discovering that there was a gap in the staircase above the crowd, Beckman made a prompt decision, and easily tore the prison guard in front of him to shreds, then immediately rushed forward. Just as he was about to step onto the stairs leading to the higher level of the prison, an indifferent voice suddenly came from behind him. I heard that you've predicted everything. However, I'm very interested in one thing. Was my appearance within your predictions? There was a hint of curiosity in the voice, and a cold chill enveloped him. Beckman's expression changed drastically, and the owner of the voice appeared in his mind. In the blink of an eye, an ominous glint appeared in his eyes. Just as he was about to turn around and attack, a dazzling light flashed, causing him to close his eyes subconsciously. Light speed kick. Boom boom boom. Beckman was instantly covered in a gorgeous golden flash, and the heavy blows that could instantly disintegrate a small mountain all landed on his body. Beckman, who was originally on the 6th floor of the infinite hell, jumped up, and his body was easily kicked to the 4th floor through the tunnel Dustless fell from. Whoosh! At this moment, a long and narrow slash whizzed over. The blood-colored light was extremely evil. Before the slash came into contact, one could feel the evil aura rushing straight to one's mind, affecting one's mind and the 4 people. The target that it wanted to devour was none other than Dustless. What's your reason for challenging me? Stopping his plan to pursue Beckman, Dustless put his hands in his pockets, sized up the tall figure in the darkness, and said indifferently. Following Dustless's line of sight, one could see a cold and desolate figure with pure killing intent. He was wearing the official uniform of the Impel Down, holding an evil odachi in his hand, a thick cigar in his mouth, and wearing an unruly expression. It was Shilyu of the Rain. Buzz buzz buzz. The roar full of disaster suddenly sounded, and the crisp sound with the endless smell of blood blended into the air. The air that breathed into the ears and nose was filled with blood, and the stench was nauseating. The trembling artifact that emitted a monstrous killing intent was the odachi in the hand of Shilyu of the Rain, the 2nd generation of the Ghost Blade. As you can see, it led me to find you. You should be a very powerful opponent, if you can make it feel afraid. Shilyu raised the ancient sword in his hand, and looked at Dustless with fanatical eyes. Shilyu of the Rain was full of havoc. The indifferent gaze did not look at Shilyu. Dustless did not speak, and his body disappeared in an instant. Boom! The wall in the distance burst open, and a large deep pit appeared. Looking at it, it was Shilyu of the Rain who was trapped in it. He couldn't stop staring at Dustless. He didn't expect him to make a sneak attack. He couldn't wait to tear Dustless into pieces. Obviously, he didn't expect him to suddenly attack. I want to fight with you like a swordsman, instead of competing with fists and feet. Holding back his anger, Shilyu of the Rain's eyes were scarlet and cold. Hearing this, Dustless just sneered. His cold eyes looked at him from a superior angle, and his cold voice rang through the dark space where he couldn't see his fingers. In one sentence, Shilyu of the Rain, who was already angry, was completely ignited. The existence of the person who deserves me to draw my sword. One thing is for sure, it is definitely not you. You want me to draw my sword and fight with you. This is just your self-deceiving idea. Do you think you are qualified? Chapter 550. His eyes were locked on Dustless. Shilyu of the Rain was a bloodthirsty person. It was originally because of the arbitrary execution of prisoners that he was sublimated from the original guard to a prisoner. Clang! Without hesitation, he pulled out of the scabbard. The sharp blade was exposed in the dark space. The low temperature was even more indifferent, and the existence of ice residue could be faintly caught in the air flowing around. Whoosh! With the 2nd generation Ghost Blade all out of the scabbard, Shilyu of the Rain's temperament changed greatly. His body exuded a strange purple demon aura. Extremely evil, the rich purple light was almost substantial, as if it was the source of evil. A little contamination will make you lose yourself. The only difference is that compared with the existence of the 1st generation Ghost Blade that Dustless put in the Gate of Babylon, the density of the demon aura is not even the same as the 1st generation Ghost Blade. With this murderous look, it is not difficult to see that Dustless has completely ignited the hidden flame in Shilyu of the Rain's heart. Witnessing Shilyu of the Rain's hostility, Dustless was unmoved. He seemed to remember the past, his brow wrinkled slightly, and he turned a deaf ear to Shilyu of the Rain's fierceness. You should have read the letter. What is the reply? When Hawkeye and Doflamingo invaded Impel Down, the two of them carried Dustless's envelope and handed it to Shilyu of the Rain on the 6th floor of Impel Down. Hearing this, Shilyu of the Rain's invincible momentum suddenly stagnated, and he suddenly realized that there was still such a thing, and the purple demon aura coat was also quickly converged. Clang! The 2nd generation Ghost Blade that forced out of the scabbard was put back into the scabbard, and the scarlet killing intent in his eyes was replaced by a color of doubt. Shilyu of the Rain had an incredible expression on his face. He was deeply skeptical of the contents of Dustless's envelope. A person who lives in the current society and you talk about the world 10 years later, Everyone feels that he is abnormal. After pondering for a long time, Shilyu of the Rain's eyes showed hesitation. The contents of Dustless's envelope were a fantasy for him. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who likes to play to the gallery. Quietly staring at Dustless, Shilyu of the Rain thought in his heart. Thinking of Dustless's unfathomable strength, his uncertain eyes turned into determination. In this world where the strong are respected, the strongest strength is the only way to go. After hesitating for a moment, Shilyu of the Rain still chose to believe in strength. In this world, only the fist is big can be unscrupulous, and the fist is small can only be beaten passively. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. If you can beat me, everything is fine. If not, please do as you please. Shilyu of the Rain said indifferently with a thick cigar in his mouth. Casually throwing away the cigar in his mouth, Shilyu of the Rain savored the thick mellow taste in his mouth. His thick lips opened slightly, and he was about to puff out a smoke ring. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in front of him and reflected in his pupils. Boom boom boom. The surface of the ground exploded with a bang. Dense cracks extended out like a spider web, swallowing the surrounding ground and splashing up smoke and dust several feet high. In the dust eye, a hazy figure loomed, and it was not difficult to see from the immature outline of the human body that it was by no means Shilyu of the Rain. You bastard! Shilyu of the Rain, whose skin was rough and black, was even more unbearable at the moment. His old face was black, like a black pot that had been used for many years, and it was gloomy like coal. Cough cough cough. Dustless suddenly launched an attack, and the smoke ring that had not yet been spat out also re-entered his abdomen and poured into the depths of his lungs. Shilyu of the Rain coughed violently uncontrollably. His old face was almost green, and his indignation was unbearable. I haven't pulled out my sword yet, and you sneak attack. Do you want to be shameless? Do you have the bearing of a swordsman? His sharp eyes stared at Dustless. The cold light that shot out made people shudder. Looking at him, one could feel a burning pain on their skin. You are a despicable and shameless villain who only knows how to use third-rate means. Shilyu of the Rain roared angrily. His lips trembled with anger, and his eyes were bloodshot. Even because of excessive anger, his voice carried a horrifying scream, and the weird sound waves could penetrate into people's souls, and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. Lying powerlessly in the pit, Dustless's sudden attack had caused fatal damage to Shilyu of the Rain, and his heart was extremely aggrieved. He felt like a clown being played by Dustless, and he didn't even have the power to fight back. You don't accept it? Dustless asked indifferently as a foot fell on Shilyu of the Rain's head. Although his face was expressionless, Dustless's contemptuous tone was undisguised, and his eyes, which were as still as a bell, gave Shilyu of the Rain a feeling that no one could shake. He is no exception, and the so-called strongest Whitebeard is no exception. Of course The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, and Shilyu of the Rain was definitely upset. He was about to satirize Dustless, but the latter was indifferent, and the voice without the slightest emotion suddenly came, making him speechless. As a swordsman, you were defeated with your bare hands. Do you think you are still a qualified swordsman? Shilyu of the Rain heard the words and clenched his teeth. His face was unwilling, and his mouth squirmed intending to refute, but he found that he was speechless. The understatement of the sentence was like a bone in his throat, and his throat was stuck, and he could not refute it. From ancient times to the present, the winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. It doesn't matter what the means are. The person who can ride on the head of all creatures is the final victor, and history has always been written by the victors. Secondly, as Dustless said, no matter what the reason, a swordsman was defeated with his bare hands, which is an undeniable fact. And because Dustless had taken advantage of the situation to attack before, Shilyu of the Rain opened his observation hockey in advance, and Dustless's every move could not escape his eyes. Even so, the final scene was the same as before, and he was easily defeated with one move. Even if he had made defensive preparations, he could not change the fact. The first time may have been careless, the second time he was relaxed and lazy on the surface, but secretly he was on guard against Dustless. Despite this, he was defeated in the blink of an eye. Chapter 551. As time passed slowly, Shilyu of the Rain's breathing became heavier and heavier. People have dignity and courage, especially the self-esteem and pride of a swordsman. Dustless's foot casually stepped on Shilyu of the Rain's blackened old face, and one could imagine what kind of blow it was to him. The murderous intent in his eyes was as vast and boundless as a torrent, and it was out of control. Buzz buzz buzz. Falling to the side. The unsheathed second-generation ghost blade also responded to the humiliation of its master, emitting bursts of sorrow, emitting an evil and deep purple light. Boom boom boom. Driven by humiliation, grief, and indignation, Shilyu of the Rain struggled hard, and his strong and powerful body trembled in resistance. The eruption of hostility went straight to Dustless's head, entering his mind and affecting his reason. A chestnut in the sea is nothing. The negative emotions that were enough to devour and annihilate the whole world burst out, and the external hostility that entered Dustless's mind was instantly suppressed, and it only stirred up a weak ripple before it was cruelly disintegrated. In this world, there was no one who could match Dustless's murderous intent. It seems that my previous thoughts were a bit naive. I thought that defeating your confidence would make you obedient. His eyes narrowed, emitting a dangerous luster, and the foot that stepped on Shilyu of the Rain lifted slightly, and then a large number of photons condensed, and the dark space instantly lit up as bright as day. Maybe letting you sleep quietly for a while is the right decision. Shilyu of the Rain choked when he heard the words, and the shining golden light forced him to close his eyes. Even so, he could still feel the light that was enough to annihilate him. The hostility on his face finally loosened, and he was no longer hostile to Dustless, or it could be said that he had agreed to the conditions in Dustless's envelope. However, it was too late. The sweat on his forehead was evaporated by the blazing light, and the light that swept out from the soles of his feet instantly swallowed him. Boom boom boom. Accompanied by a harsh roar, a huge fireball bloomed out of the dark and boundless void, and the center of the battle between Dustless and Shilyu of the Rain was engulfed. Although the strength of the lightspeed kick has been greatly reduced, it's still very dangerous to be hit head-on. Glancing at the charred and unconscious Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless's face was full of indifference as he left. Even if Shilyu of the Rain really kneels down and begs for mercy, he can't be easily let go. This kind of person was born rebellious and held grudges. If he didn't intimidate or oppress him with force, he might stab him in the back at any time. Beckman, that brat should have escaped, Dustless muttered to himself in the dark corridor. Now he looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old. In fact, he had lived 3 lives and was over 50 years old. In his eyes, Beckman was no different from a child who hadn't grown up. Impel Down was surrounded by the sea and isolated from the world. There was only one way to escape, and that was to leave by boat. There was no other way. Suddenly there was a slight vibration on the ground. Dustless stopped and his thinking face suddenly raised. It was a group of pirates who had escaped from the prison. Frowning, Dustless looked at the line of sight that had been passed by before. The dense pirates fell in a pool of blood. Now he was on the 3rd floor of Impel Down, and he almost killed all the way. He didn't know how many pirates he had killed during this period. One after another, there's no end to it. Ripples suddenly appeared in his calm eyes, and an invisible energy fluctuation broke out of his body. The pirates who were holding their long swords were instantly annihilated. Haushika Haki is really suitable for cleaning up the miscellaneous soldiers. Dustless smiled and then quietly slipped away and went straight to the exit of Impel Down. This deep-sea prison was a huge process that Marine headquarters and the world government spent decades to build. It would take a while to get out. About half an hour later, Dustless saw the bright morning sun. Looking around and closing his eyes, the majestic perception spread and the area covered almost the entire Impel Down. He thought that Beckman was still in Impel Down, but he didn't expect that he had already escaped. That group of people. It seems that they are ready to meet me. If you want to escape from Impel Down, the only way is to leave by boat. There are battleships all around, and it is impossible to run the ship by one person, only by preparing in advance. But you can escape, which is also in line with the ending I want to see. The dry and cracked corners of his mouth quietly rose, and Dustless disappeared into the void. Dustless didn't need to meddle in the rioting prisoners in Impel Down. Although it was an eventful period when Sengoku was the fleet admiral, any crisis was handled by him in an orderly manner. As long as these prisoners were still in Impel Down, they were like turtles in a jar. With the disappearance of Dustless, the source of the chaos, everything calmed down, leaving only the constant devastation and the occasional tremor in Impel Down. At the same time, the duel on the other side also came to an end. In terms of pure swordsmanship, perhaps Red Hair is slightly inferior to Hawkeye, but in terms of comprehensive ability, it is obvious that he is slightly better. However, it is impossible to defeat Hawkeye with this. The scene fell into a stalemate. Both of them were panting and did not admit defeat. They stared at each other's every move. "It seems that you are determined to follow that man, Hawkeye," Red Hair Shanks said in a hoarse voice as he stared at Hawkeye, who refused to give up. His heart hurt like a knife, and his former best friend became an enemy. This huge contrast even made him collapse and despair. The psychological impact was far greater than the physical impact, and the dozens of scars were not as deep as the impact of Hawkeye's betrayal. Thinking of the crew members who shared weal and woe with him, Red Hair Shanks finally persevered. "Come at me." Hawkeye wasn't that strong either, so he didn't want to give up. "Come at me." Red Hair Shanks heard the words and completely put aside the entanglement of the past. The hesitation in his heart turned into a resolute determination. He was determined to destroy Hawkeye at all costs. If he doesn't kill him now, maybe in the future it will be his crew members who groan under Hawkeye's black knife. Chapter 552. Now Red Hair Shanks is the opposite of his usual gentle self. His eyes are cold and murderous. Even because of his companions, Hawkeye's control and power are on a higher level. At this moment, Red Hair is still bloodthirsty. "Is this the other side of your treatment of the enemy, Shanks?" Holding the black sword in both hands, Hawkeye didn't forget to tease Shanks. "You seem to be a lot stronger than before. At the same time, your wisdom has decreased a lot." Whiz. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he noticed that the red-haired Shanks was full of flaws. He raised the black blade in his hand and pounced towards the red-haired Shanks. Ripples appeared in the void as the jade-green sword energy crushed towards the red-haired Shanks. The moment it was about to swallow Red Hair, another change occurred. Bang bang bang. A series of muffled gunshots rang out, followed by several pitch-black bullets that pierced through the awe-inspiring radiance. The awe-inspiring radiance was unscathed, but its fierce momentum was weakened by 70%. Boom. The western sword in his hand was gently raised and threw out a cold light. Hawkeye's attack collapsed and turned into a dense rainstorm. When it came into contact with Red Hair, the power had been greatly reduced and was easily dispersed by him. Bullets covered with armament Hawkeye? Hawkeye frowned deeply and said, "Just a few fleeting black bullets were difficult to catch with the naked eye. Only observation Hawkeye can capture the speed of the bullets." Hawkeye keenly found that the bullets wrapped with armament Hawkeye were swallowed by his attack, but it also weakened the power of the attack in a disguised way. When it was close to Red Hair, the power was less than 20%. "You bastard!" Hawkeye's face changed slightly, and his eyes were hoarse. He had already guessed who the instigator behind the scenes was. His sharp eyes expanded and all the movements around him were taken into his eyes. The people who ambushed him were the crew of Red Hair pirates. "You want to involve other people in the personal grievances between you and me?" The hands holding the black sword trembled, and Hawkeye's mood splashed huge ripples. The dialogue was full of gunpowder. Hawkeye went to the battle alone, but Red Hair secretly ambushed his crew and dared to interrupt the duel between them. How could Hawkeye not be angry? Staring at the red-haired Shanks in front of him. This was the first time in his life that he felt that the red-haired Shanks was so unfamiliar. That good brother of his who drank and chatted merrily with him in the past seemed to be a disguise. "I should have said before that I am not a swordsman but a pirate." The red-haired Shanks smiled calmly. For pirates, despicable or not, no one cares about these details. It's all up to the winner. A trustworthy pirate is not a good pirate. The competition between us is over. The sword in his hand returned to the scabbard. He closed his eyes and recalled the previous battle. Red Hair said, "Frankly speaking, I'm not as good as you, the world's greatest swordsman in terms of swordsmanship. But in terms of overall ability, I'm still slightly better. However, all of this is not important now." His eyes suddenly opened, emitting a dark light that was enough to swallow Hawkeye. Red Hair's cold voice resounded through the sky. "The duel between you and me ended ahead of time. Now, it's going to be a war between you and the Akagami Red Hair pirates." As Red Hair's powerful roar fell, the surrounding environment was filled with sand and stones. Under the reflection of the sand, several hazy figures swept out one after another. The members of the Akagami Red Hair pirates who were secretly peeping finally jumped out of the water. The Akagami Red Hair pirates all appeared. "That bastard is really shameless. He can do such a shameless thing." In the dense jungle, White Zetsu was indignant, but he was not worried. There were many projection Den Den Mushi beside him, and the other side was connected to Mariehua Dustless. Compared to White Zetsu, Dustless is much happier. Howl! A sharp whistling sound resounded through the sky, and a green light cut through the void, followed by a huge chop that was powerful enough to destroy a mountain swept towards the Akagami Red Hair pirates. And Hawkeye has already seen the situation and slipped away. In such a critical moment, Hawkeye naturally won't be stupid enough to fight hard. It's useless to show off his courage. If Akagami Red Hair is alone, Hawkeye can fight him, but if the whole Akagami Red Hair pirate ship besieges him together, it will be like ants biting an elephant to death. The crew of the Akagami Red Hair pirates are the elites of the elites, and there is only one way to go if they fight hard. Dustless, who is far away in Mariehua, is living a free and easy life. The image reflected in the Den Den Mushi in front of him is a live broadcast of Hawkeye and Akagami, accompanied by a peerless beauty. On the left is the indifferent Princess Odoheim, and on the right is Hancock, who is responsible for Dustless's daily life. Your subordinates are being chased to the point of no return, yet you still have the leisure to eat fruits? Princess Odoheim disdained to communicate with Dustless, but the scene in front of her made her speechless. She saw Dustless comfortably swallowing the crystal grape sent by Hancock's jade hand. "This lazy look is like a god. The number of times you take the initiative to talk to me is very few." Dustless was slightly surprised, but he didn't think that Princess Odoheim would be fascinated by his style and turn over a new leaf. In the past, Princess Odoheim avoided him, and the chances of her taking the initiative to talk to him were zero. "We're a family, don't say two words. If you have something to say, you're also my possession." Dustless generously promised Princess Odoheim, but his malicious eyes were hard to believe. Hearing this, Princess Odoheim's eyes flashed. She did have something to ask. After knowing each other for a long time, she also understood Dustless's mind. If she followed his words, she would be safe. If she didn't open her eyes, she would have a serious end. Princess Odoheim has a deep understanding of this. These days she has been obedient to Dustless, and they get along very well. Chapter 553. Princess E.G. was bashful. She wanted to say something but stopped. Wu Chen's smiling expression was extremely hateful in her eyes. The corners of his mouth were raised high. He was no different from an old fox waiting for a rabbit to come to his door. "I don't have anything to ask of you." Turning her head, Princess Aji ignored Wu Chen's gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. The more she spoils Dustless, the worse he will become. After a while, Princess Odoheim has a little understanding of him, and after several summaries, she has found an alternative way to make a living. Boring. Seeing that Princess Odoheim didn't answer, Dustless also retracted his gaze and touched his smooth chin. He is only interested in the prey that will resist, and the sheep that are obedient can't arouse the slightest interest, like chicken bones. It's a pity to throw them away. Sure enough, it's the same as what Hancock said. Seeing that Dustless didn't pay attention to her, Princess Odoheim's mouth raised a smile of conspiracy, and at the same time, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. and suddenly found that the previous fierce resistance was simply self-destruction. She behaved obediently. Over time, Wu Chen's interest in her would gradually fade. It's true that people's hearts can't be seen. Hancock's eyes were always observing the scene in the Den Den Mushi, and it was extremely complicated. In her impression, Akagami is the kind of bold pirate who is very heroic and attaches importance to the existence of his companions. The red-haired man in front of her subverted her previous understanding. This may be the situation. Princess Otoheim also slightly nodded, and there was an incredible look in her eyes as she whispered, I have heard that Akagami Shanks is a person who attaches great importance to friendship. As the queen of the Fishman Island, Princess Otoheim is more knowledgeable than Hancock. Akagami Shanks is an anomaly among the pirates. Among the Yonko 4 emperors, he is the only one who drifts around without a fixed residence. Whether it is the Whitebeard pirates, the Bigumamu pirates, or the Kaido pirates, the New World has annexed countless islands. Only Akagami Shanks is home and roams the world. He is the opposite of those ambitious pirates. Value friendship? Red Hair Shanks is indeed that kind of man. Even if he was slapped in the face, he wouldn't allow others to bully his friends or crew. But that was in the past. Now Hawkeye is on my side, and our positions are different. Hawkeye can hurt his friends at any time, so naturally Red Hair Shanks is eager to kill him. Dustless was quite clear about this. Red Hair Shanks was a person who valued friendship and loyalty, but this rule was only limited to his close friends and companions. Hawkeye, who used to be his best friend, was now his enemy. That was all. To put it bluntly, the red-haired Shanks you respected in the past is just a clown. Dustless added fuel to the fire when he saw Princess Otoheim, and Hancock's eyes were slightly dim. Facts speak louder than words, and there is no need for Dustless to fabricate. What happened in the Den Den Mushi in front of him has already explained everything. Treat your friends with respect, but if you are an enemy, you will naturally fight with your sword. Everyone actually has two sides of justice and evil. Red Hair Shanks used to expose his positive and optimistic side, and now it belongs to the other side that few people know. Dustless said bluntly, with a contemptuous attitude towards Red Hair Shanks. It's true that pirates are not good things. After a long silence, Hancock nodded slightly, and found that her previous ideas were too naive. She immediately looked at Princess Otoheim and said contemptuously, Do you think that Whitebeard sheltered your Fishman Island without a purpose? Stupid. Dustless sneered, and Whitebeard inexplicably found that he had done too many wrong things in half of his life. Sheltering the Fishman Island? It's tantamount to a fantasy. What is a pirate? The pursuit of profit, the pursuit of profit. This is the true portrayal of a pirate. Burning and looting under the loud slogan of pursuing dreams. This is a pirate. Whitebeard is the most powerful pirate with both wisdom and courage. Sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason is unclear. According to Dustless's guess, there must be some unknown purpose. Impossible, he is very friendly to the Fishman Island. Her pretty face changed greatly, and Princess Otoheim argued. During the time when Whitebeard sheltered the Fishman Island, the foreign pirates were low-key, and the Fishman Island became a peaceful paradise. I only believe that no one gets up early without profit. Glancing at Princess Otoheim, Dustless sighed. The Fishman's idea is always too pure, and dealing with cunning humans will only lead to deceit. In your impression, Red Hair Shanks is very forthright and unrestrained, but now he and his crew besieged Hawkeye. The Whitebeard you see is only the color on the surface. Only God knows what he really is. Speaking of this, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Everyone has two sides. Before, Red Hair Shanks exposed only the surface character of people, and now the scene is the darkness in his heart. Each of the Yonko 4 emperors of the New World is actually a bloody executioner. Whitebeard and Red Hair Shanks are like this. It is because the world is afraid of their strength, and because each of them stepped on a mountain of corpses, which indirectly laid the foundation for their Yonko 4 emperors. Name. That is to say, everyone also has two sides, and you are no exception. Princess Otoheim is obviously much bolder than the slightly obedient Hancock. Dustless smiled and did not deny it, and seriously replied, Yes. What about your dark side? Princess Otoheim blinked and asked curiously. Akagami, this kind of person, could give up everything to kill Hawkeye. Once Dustless broke out, she was curious about what unexpected things would happen. God knows. Dustless shrugged, and at the same time, he couldn't help but think about Whitebeard's intentions and purposes for sheltering the Fishman Island. It is certain that his thoughts are not simple. There must be other plans. Chapter 554. A pirate with a high bounty means that their hands are stained with more blood. There is no reason for the strongest butcher like Whitebeard to shelter the Fishman Island for no reason. Impossible, he must be. You are just deceiving yourself. I am afraid that you can't even deceive yourself. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Princess Otoheim's speech, and said indifferently, There is no profit. This is the truth that will never change. Princess Otoheim's face was blue when she heard this, and she wanted to refute, but she was speechless. After thinking about it, Whitebeard, a big pirate, sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason, is indeed somewhat unreasonable and extraordinary. It is extremely difficult to find an excuse that can convince and deceive her. You want to get the protection of the government, but you are sworn brothers with Whitebeard, an enemy. Shaking his head, Dustless sighed that Princess Otoheim's idea was ridiculous and naive. She wanted to join the world government and get protection, but she secretly became sworn brothers with Whitebeard. This way of stepping on two boats is only self-destruction. Whitebeard, although I don't know what you're plotting, but you'd better not have that kind of thought or else, humph. Wuxia snorted with a bone-chilling light in his eyes. The dragon has a reverse scale, and it will die. The relationship between Roger and Whitebeard is unusual. It is not ruled out that he told Whitebeard the content of the poneglyph, and after witnessing the strength of the world government, Whitebeard also moved other thoughts. He wants to defeat the world government and Marine in an alternative way, or simply to protect his sons. Don't tell me you're saying that her intentions are. Princess Otoheim's face was ugly, and the reason why Dustless valued her was clear for a long time. Hearing this, Dustless nodded silently this time. Although it was only a guess at the moment, there was only one thing on the Fishman Island that could attract a legendary figure like Whitebeard. I told you before that everyone has two sides. Don't think of Whitebeard as a sheep. The old man is actually a beast that can devour everything. Dustless said seriously. Whitebeard doesn't know some poneglyph, but his best friend One Piece Gold. Roger does know many unknown secrets. It was not impossible to tell Whitebeard some important information. There's an 80% chance that they're here for the Sea King. However, I hope that old man knows what's good for him. Dustless's gaze fell on Princess Otoji's body. He gently patted her shoulder and said with a pleasant smile, There is no need to worry. When I let you go, I left my power in you and your mother. With the birth of Shirahoshi, my power has also been transferred to her. If Whitebeard dares to act rashly, he will be caught in his own trap. I hope so. Princess Aji nodded worriedly. Although it's just Dustless's guess, the only thing that can attract Whitebeard on Fishman Island is the ancient weapon, Sea King. The source of Whitebeard's news is naturally Roger, the Pirate King. Although Whitebeard is a pirate, he is not a brainless man. He knows what's more important. He won't touch the key to open Pandora's ink box unless he has to. He can't afford such a price and consequences. Taking advantage of the situation, he took Princess Aji into his arms. Wuxia explained while taking advantage of her. Unlike before, Princess Otoji did not resist this time. Her eyes were dotted with pitiful hesitation and helplessness. Instead of refusing Dustless, she grabbed his clothes. It seems that only when her heart is empty and flustered can she calm down. If Whitebeard really wants to rob Shirahoshi, no one on Fishman Island can stop him. The only life-saving straw is Dustless. Don't worry, Whitebeard is not a god. He may only know that the Sea King exists on Fishman Island. He doesn't know who it is. Dustless comforted her softly. The poneglyph only records the location of the ancient weapon. It doesn't detail who it is. Looking at today's world, the people who know that Shirahoshi is the Sea King are definitely not more than 5. The reason why Princess Otoji knew was that Dustless told her impatiently, "That man seems to have landed on the island, master," Hancock said with a smile, and her voice was like the sound of nature, making people addicted. Dustless glanced at her faintly, and then nodded slightly. His eyes moved away from Princess Otoji's body, and stared at the image reflected in the Den Den Mushi. What came into view was the embarrassed Beckman. This savior finally appeared. Otherwise, Hawkeye might have been besieged by Akagami Red Hair, pirates and died. Beckman came to Hawkeye's rescue. This carefully arranged script is good. Dustless's mouth outlined a gloomy smile, and his tone was unusually hoarse. Princess Otoji and Hancock, sitting next to Dustless, looked at each other and could see the looming fear in each other's eyes. The only fortunate thing is that this gloomy taste is not directed at the two of them. Don't tell me you're counting on Beckman to help Hawkeye? Patting her chest, Princess Otoheim tried her best to remain calm and asked curiously. Hancock also tilted her head and looked at Dustless with her smart eyes. Apparently, she was also looking forward to Dustless's answer. It's true. When I saw him a few months ago, I left something special in his body, but because my ability was too strange, Beckman couldn't detect it. Dustless said lightly as if he had done a trivial thing. He quietly tasted the hot tea in his hand, but the evil smile on the corner of his mouth was enough to make people retreat. He looked at Beckman with contempt. The joy reflected in his eyes was clearly visible. Wu Chen's face was full of contempt and disdain. What awaited Beckman was not the joy of reuniting after so many hardships, but the complete fall from heaven to hell. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.